Hello, and welcome back to my comfy corner where I talk about things that make me comfy and cozy so I could stop bothering the people around me. And today I am going to try holding the mic like this because that way I could see if the light is glowing green or not and my audio does not cut out because I'm going to be talking a lot. Today, I'm going to prove that I not only talk about K pop, but I talk about other things that make me comfy and cozy too. One of which is Myrtle. For those that are new to my channel, I one of the very first videos that I made, aside from TXT, was talking about one of my favorite book series slash puzzle series of all time, Myrtle. And I have literally every Myrtle aside from the junior Myrtles because I feel like they're for kids and they are meant for kids, and so there's no need for me because I am an adult and I will not be taking any further questions. But I went to Barnes and Noble with my fiance and saw this and thought, you know what? I might just pass this one. I mean, I have literally every single other thing, and this is a Christmas themed one. I'm gonna pass it. And depending on when I record this, or when I upload it, which I am planning prayerfully, Editor Tiana has made this so that it is up for Christmas as a Christmas treat to you. So therefore, the friend that I am talking about in question should have already unpacked and opened this. But I saw this and immediately thought, I'm not going to do this, but I think this would be a great present for my friend for Christmas. And so I purchased it for her for Christmas. Um, However, I did not realize that my fiance ended up giving me uh, this for myself as well because he knows how much that I love Myrtle. And so I say that to say, um, I did not realize that this Myrtle, Christmas themed Myrtle, was actually an advent calendar. And so when I got it, I believe it was December 5th or maybe it was December 9th. I'm flipping through because I think I put down when it was. I think it was the 5th or the 6th of December where I got this. And so it is an advent calendar. And so I am saying all of this to say, because this is my intro and this is my video. I can ribble and ramble however I want. Um, I'm saying that to say, as I have started to, and as you could see, have been doing my daily myrtles, I thought I want to make a video. I want to make a video of this, and I will make said video of this, but also I would love to try to figure out if I can solve this with my extensive knowledge of the Myrtle universe, because there are a lot of recurring characters and a lot of hints and nods to previous volumes that the average person who may just have picked this up out of nowhere would not know. And I think that's great because that way it won't sort of spoil the fun and mystery. But as someone who is an avid Myrtle person, can I solve this Myrtle before the end? And also, will my knowledge of these characters actually matter or tie into the story? And thirdly, will my friend who will most likely see this, hi friend, will my friend who will most likely see this and see the present, and I hope and pray that she does not watch this as a spoiler, but I will timestamp it so that way she can follow along if she would like, as well as you guys. If you guys get Myrtle as well, I highly recommend it. It's a really great advent so far, and a great way to dip your toe into the Myrtle universe if you do not feel like getting the big volumes. But I say that to say, I would love to see my friend's reaction to me going through it day by day, because she has no knowledge, as far as I know. She has no knowledge of the Myrtle universe. And so I would love to see and hear her opinions as she goes through it, as someone who has zero knowledge versus me who has all the knowledge. So, with all that preamble and stuff said, I will be giving you guys a synopsis of what the book is about. Wee spoilers here. I will try to timestamp and I will try to make sure that I timestamp each day. So that way, if you would like to follow along after purchasing the book, that you can follow along and it could be like a fun little mystery that we do together. As of today is December 13th. So I will be recording up until December 13th. And today is also my sister's birthday. So I would love to say happy birthday to my sister. I hope you are doing well. I hope that you had a fantastical birthday and that you're able to celebrate the way that you wanted to, get the rest that you really do need because you work hard and you have earned it. And I love you. And I hope everything's going great. Again, Editor Tiana, fingers crossed, will be posting this on Christmas, but I did not want to go and let today go by without saying happy birthday to my sister. And now that I got all that preamble out the way, Join me on this fantastical journey of Myrtle and Logico trying to solve if Santa Claus is real and who kidnapped him. Okay, so this is the introductory slash intro to the character section of the video, and I would like to start off by saying that again, this is a very historied a book series that actually really came out this year. Yeah, Myrtle really came out this year and came out swinging, if not last year. The time has been going and flying by so fast. But anyway, there are numerous volumes of Myrtle, and for those that aren't able to purchase the book or aren't willing to really commit to an entire book of the puzzles without understanding how to play it, you can go on their website for free and play a Myrtle each day. That may or may not be connected to the overarching story. It may or may not be included in the next book. So feel free to go to their website. This is all free sponsorship, by the way. And honestly, I feel like I should be sponsored by Myrtle with how much I have talked about it to my friends and everyone around me and how many books that I purchased. I have literally purchased every book and every spin-off, yes, including the jigsaw puzzles as well, aside from the junior books, because again, I feel like they're for kids and I am not a kid. So I feel like, if anything, and if this video somehow blows up, that the creator of Myrtle, GT Carver, call me. I would love to get some money and some sponsorship. You are welcome. Anyways, so the book is following Deductive Logico. You heard me right, not detective, Deductive Logico. He is a deducer, not a detective. However, he loves solving murders. And the way that he solves the murders is using this grid-like puzzle, which is what you'll be using throughout the entire book. This is what it looks like. Now, what he does do in this book, which is a little bit different from the others because you could skim past the intro if you already know what it is, but the intro slash the tutorial on how to do his puzzles and the puzzles in the book actually tells you the preamble for the story. So basically, Deductive Logico has been put on the case of trying to figure out who killed this person in the North Pole, but also who it's not a murder, actually. I'm just reviewing and reading it. Usually, deductive logico is with murders, but someone has been kidnapped. He assumes that that is a murder, but it is not a murder. Someone has been kidnapped, and that person is Santa Claus. So he goes to the North Pole, not believing that Santa Claus is real, with his partner, Inspector Irrational, which I will mention later on in the book. But for now, just know that his partner, Irrational, is with him, and they are trying to solve who kidnaps Santa, right? So he's like, this is nonsensical, but here are the three suspects. Now, the three suspects are General Coffee, Mrs. Claus, and Baker Snowman. And as the tutorial explains to you how it goes through, you find out that it was actually General Coffee. I am mentioning this just because it will come up later in how I am deducing who and what and where and when, because General Coffee is a recurring character. He's one of my favorite recurring characters, and I'll get into it later. So, after we go through the intro and like I said preamble, it tells you and shows you how to go through this grid-like puzzle and how all of that entails. We find out that it in fact was General Coffee with a giant candy cane in Santa's workshop. Think about it as Clue, but it's another way of having to solve Clue. And once you do these myrtles, I promise you your Clue game will be a lot better if you decide to go through this puzzle like mindset, because it really is just Clue, but just a very fun way and also a much more detailed way. I love this book series. I'm going to stop gushing in a second. So yes, we find out that it was General Coffee with a giant candy cane in Santa's workshop that ended up kidnapping and potentially killing Santa Claus. We don't know what happened with Santa Claus. He may be murdered, he may be kidnapped, he may not exist. We don't know, but we know that it was General Coffee that was a part of it. And so before Logico can arrest him and or something can be done for him, General Coffee ends up leaving in a helicopter. And he says, and I'm going to quote from the book, "That's right," General Coffee declared. "I was hired to do a dirty job for somebody who wouldn't have done it themselves. You see, I had to be willing to do anything, but my client isn't a murderer. They don't have the stomach from it." And then Logico asked, "Who hired you?" And then he said, "I could never tell you that, Logico. All I could say is this. They hired me when they were here, at the North Pole, sometime in the last 25 days. And with that, General Coffee is gone. So now, Logico has a new mystery on his hand. He knows who kidnapped Santa Claus, but it really wasn't General Coffee just because. It was someone else. So now he wants to figure out who hired General Coffee to kidnap and potentially kill Santa Claus, if he exists. And I keep saying this because the book also keeps reminding us, does he exist? Is this really a thing? And this will be important later as well. But again, I'm trying to do my best to give you an intro as solid as I can without spoiling and mentioning things that I know about the characters and just sort of how the book works. So, once we have finished that preamble, we now have the setting for the reason of the book. Logico has 25 days to figure out who hired General Coffee to kidnap Santa Claus and where Santa Claus may be if he is alive or if he even exists. And he has 25 days to do it because Christmas. And you want him to have Santa there for Christmas. They do joke that technically it doesn't make sense to figure out on the 25th day where Santa Claus is because he should have already delivered the presents the 24th day, but we ignore that and we still solve it anyway. Irrational, who's this partner, believes in Santa Claus and wants Logico to find Santa Claus and is very distraught about this. Logico, however, does not believe that Santa Claus exists, and so we have a little dichotomy, but again, they solve it either way. Now, a big note as to what is happening here and how do we figure out who hired General Coffee is the last parting words that General Coffee said. He said that his person that hired him is not capable of murder, does not have the stomach for it, can't do it, right? So that means we will be solving murders and mysteries of the 25 suspects that we have that was at the North Pole location in those time period frames and periods. But we will be solving the murders that have happened in whoever was the murderer is not the person that hired General Coffee. So it's sort of a mystery within a mystery. You still have each day you still have to solve a murder, which we call myrtles, and that is a huge distinction, and I'll explain why later. But we have to solve the myrtle of the day, cross out the person that did do the murder because they are not the person that hired General Coffee, and three, after deducing and crossing out enough people, figure out who you think did it and why, and also what's the overarching theme and story. Another side thing that I would like to note, and I think is very cute, is that in the introduction, there is a stray cat that is a potential weapon. And after Logico finishes the case, this stray cat ends up following Logico throughout the entire 25 days. And so it's like a little hidden Mickey each day to figure out if you could find where the cat is. And it is very cute and adorable. It is very easy to figure out where the cat is. And I have my own thoughts and theories about the cat as well. But I can't escape cats. I just registered that. For those who have watched my TXT Ribbles and Rambles, like 8 hours plus of me talking about TXT lore, I can't escape cats. Maybe I should just get one at this point. And I've been debating on it, but I've been a responsible adult because I have enough animals in my life and I need to be a responsible adult. But I just can't escape cats. They are haunting me. I don't know if this is a sign from somewhere, but I just want to add that as well. So, with all of that being said, that is the intro. I will now discuss the 25 characters and the 25 suspects, just reading off and rambling off their bios, just in case for the people who cannot or are not going to purchase the book would also like to follow along, I would like to give it. So there will be a section where I rattle off about the characters, just plain, and then there will be a spoiler section where I say, spoiler, wee these are my thoughts of the characters from the previous books, in case those that would like to really go in this vanilla, i.e., my friend, if you would like to go through this vanilla, feel free. If you would like to go in this with my thoughts and theories and spoilers on certain characters from previous books, feel free. So, with that being said, I will just being a YouTuber with a mic in my hand. With that being said, I will get into the 25 suspects. I'm going to try to talk about the suspects again. So, there are 25 suspects, and this is the spoiler free version, meaning I will just be reading off the who's and their little descriptions that are inside the book. So, the first one is Arnold the Blue Nosed Reindeer, which is hilarious. Believe it or not, that famous reindeer is still under copyright. This is his less notable brother. Unlike his sibling, he is never recognized as special, so he's pretty resentful. Would he have taken it out on Santa? Yeah, so each blurb also gives like sort of a potential motive for each person. Now, I would also like to say the motives themselves um, that are first initially put on, I don't think is actually the potential motives for some, but again, I will get into that with my own thoughts. So there's Chef Aubergine, She runs one of the hottest restaurants in London, and the place is always packed for weeks for her Christmas dinners. Would she have kidnapped Santa to serve him or her Would she have kidnapped Santa to serve him at her restaurant? A ghastly thought, but if she did do it, he would probably be delicious. Ooh, 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 ooh. I can't wait to give my own little insights. Hack Blackston. He's one of the best paid writers of his generation and one of the worst too. Maybe he kidnapped Santa in order to promote his ridiculously over the top spec script, Santa Slay. It's very disrespectful. Then there's chess boxer Blaze. She's as good with the left hook as she is with the left rook. You don't want to mess with someone who's good at both chess and boxing. She will calmly plot your demise, and then when you least expect it, punch you in your face. Then there's Crime Queen Caramel, the only competition Dame Obsidian has to the claim of being the best selling mystery writer of all time, or rather, the only competition she has that's still alive. Um, Dame Obsidian is also a suspect, so I will reserve my comments for when I get to Dame. But just know she is a suspect as well. That is why she's mentioned. Then there's Chairman Chalk. He figured out the business years ago and never looked back. He called ebooks a fad and still owns a rotary phone. He's worth $1 billion. This year he's bet big on Christmas books. Might he have kidnapped Santa Claus in order to raise Christmas's profile? Then we have Mrs. Claus, which, if you remember as well, was also in the introduction mystery as one of the suspects. So, Mrs. Claus, whenever a person is killed or kidnapped, the number one suspect is always their spouse. And in this case, if Santa Claus isn't real, as Logical suspects, then who is this woman anyway? And is the secret ingredient in her delicious almond cookies nothing other than cyanide? We shall see. Then there's Scientific Evergreen. He is studying Santa Claus using particle physics and the few pieces of evidence we have managed to scrounge together. Example, half eaten cookies, milk glass fingerprints, etc. Then there's Assistant Elf Greenie. He's one of Santa's many helpers at the North Pole. He has the most to gain by the death of the head elf. But also, is he too cute to be a killer? Then there's Mr. Grayman. Definitely, absolutely a real life human being, 100% born and raised on Earth. Would he have come to Earth to study the strange time dilation abilities that allow Santa to deliver all his presents in one night? Then there is CEO Indigo. He's the CEO of Tech Futures. Disrupting Christmas is just the kind of harebrained Silicon Valley scheme that would appeal to him. After all, Santa Claus was a major competitor in the Christmas gift space, and he was undercutting them on prices. Then there is Agent Ink, an agent with a heart of gold, but a mind for gold too. She listens to books at 37 times the speed, and last year read more than 6,000 books. However, in the last year, she has repeatedly offered to represent Santa, which he has declined. Then Inspector Irrational is a suspect, and I will again give my thoughts in the spoiler section just because there's a lot that goes into that. Inspector Irrational believes in Santa, of course, but would he have kidnapped Santa Claus to prove his innocent existence and therefore demonstrate the truth of Christmas magic? Then there's Vice President Mauve. She's rising in the ranks at TechCo Futures. Would she kidnap Santa to get a promotion at work? Please, she would do anything to get a promotion at work, and she will. Then there's Midnight the Third. Again, cannot wait till we get to the spoiler section so I can really talk about these characters the way that I want to. But again, I want to give everybody a fair chance, especially said friend, to go through this with their own thoughts and the vanilla version of it. So I will put that there. Midnight the Third, the president of Midnight Studios, he's a self made man. He works hard to get that title from his grandfather, and he believes he's earned it. He has been looking for the perfect movie for the holiday season for every holiday season he's been alive. And kidnapping Santa to promote it isn't close to the worst thing a studio's done. Then there is my good Judy ma'am, Dame Obsidian. She's famous for her Christmas parties. Well, she's famous for her murders and her best selling books about them, but she's been known to throw a good Christmas party as well. Then there's Major Red. He wears red and gives away free stuff to people he thinks are good, so he has a pretty good claim to being Santa Claus himself, but like Santa Claus, with a bunch of weapons. Then there's Grandmaster Rose. He has a bunch of outstanding requests to Santa Claus: heavy chess pieces, a fancy marble board, an expensive chess clock, an opening manual, and a special buzzer to help him cheat. There's a lot of characters, but there's 25. I'm getting through it, guys. I'm getting through it. Then there is Ebenezer Rouge. This red faced skinflint won't spend a penny of his own money on anything except himself. Then there is Silverton the Legend. The silver haired star of the silver screen. For years, He's coveted one role above all others, Santa Claus. He'd do anything to make sure he gets it. Then there is Captain Slate. She is a controversial figure. On the one hand, she's the first woman to travel around the dark side of the moon. On the other, she almost certainly murdered her co pilot while she was there. Santa gave her the coal that year, but she just used it as fuel. Iconic. Iconic behavior. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Then there's Ski Pro Sunflower. She skied every mountain in the world from Everest to Aegis, and she's never once lost a race, no matter what she had to do to win. Would she kill Santa if he got in the way of her skiing? Absolutely. Then there is Truther Topaz. He's a conspiracy streamer who is starting to believe that he's uncovered the biggest cover up of all time, a worldwide conspiracy to fake the existence of Santa Claus. See Appendix D. There are appendixes here. I will only mention them when I believe that they are relevant and important. In this case, it is not. Uh, but again, I will mention it when it gets there. That would mean everyone was in on it, parents, government, older brothers, everyone but him. Then there is Chancellor Tuscany. The Chancellor has had some rough accusations thrown her way: murder, covering up murder, conspiracy to cover up murder, but she has never let that distract her from what's really important in life: power. Would she kidnap Santa to help her climb to the top? Why not? And last but certainly not least is Mr. Tuxedo, world famous penguin murderer Mr. Penguin. As in, he's a penguin who murders, thinks that perhaps the Christmas penguin would be a better symbol for the holiday than St. Nick, and perhaps he's decided to do something about it. Yes, a literal Christmas penguin. A literal penguin is a suspect. And with that being said, those are the 25 suspects. Now, like I just said, each myrtle or each day that you do said myrtle, depending on how you do this advent or how you solve the puzzle, uh, there will be 5 suspects that could have potentially done the murder of that day. And out of the 5, you will deduce who the one person is. It does tell you the solution at the back of the puzzle, which I personally like because in previous myrtles and volumes, you'll have to like actually flip to the back of the book to figure out the solutions. And sometimes that means you may get spoiled on the next one, depending on how it is been printed. But with this one, you actually get the solution at the very back of the puzzle itself, and it does not spoil it for the next one, which I absolutely love. I really do hope that the way that the solutions are presented are kept up for the next volumes, because I think that this is a lot better than me having to flip to the back of the book where all of the solutions are. And also, the solution has extra story tidbits to it. Um, to where sometimes I have accidentally spoiled myself on what the next answer is. So um, remember that each day you will have one suspect who is the murderer to cross off from these 25 suspects. Now, with that all being said, I will now go into the spoiler section so I could gush about these characters and everything that I know, and also give what my initial thought of guessing who is the murderer based off of my knowledge of Myrtle. So, for those that are here at the spoiler zone, good, because I can't wait to gush about these characters. And from here on out, I would also like to say wee wee spoiler, and I'll say it in the next section for those that missed this one. I will be talking about each day, and I will say what day I am on, but I'll also be giving my thoughts and theories on each day and what the answer is. So, if you do not want to know the answer of that particular day, wait until you solve it and or wait until you're ready to hear the truth. But from here on out and from the next section on out, the deductions that I have made and will make, and also the answers that are real in the book, will have my own thoughts and theories based off of my extensive knowledge on Myrtle. I did want to give anybody just that extra preamble, and up until that point, this video is going to be long. I know it's going to be long. It's going to be a fun time for editor Tiana to edit and put together, but for those that did not want to be spoiled and or just wanted the preamble and wanted to guess from there, have fun. But now this is the spoiler section. I will make sure in the next section to also wheel spoiler alert. So if you do not want to be spoiled about previous books of Myrtle and my knowledge on the characters, again, do not listen to this section, but I've already done that. So what I will say is there are a lot of cool new characters in this, but a lot of them are very prominent recurring characters. And at first I was very confused because General Coffee said that the person that hired them is not a murderer and does not have the gumption, the gall to murder, which was very confusing because a lot of the people in this book are murderers and have murdered before in previous books. But I'm going to say, based off of my assumption that GT Carver um, knows that people may pick up this holiday book as a holiday book and not have any knowledge of the previous characters and their deeds, that everybody has sort of been wiped clean of being a murderer or not, aside from a few that I would like to say do carry over. But again, if you did not know, then you would have not have known. But I would also like to put that out there, that a lot of the people that I'm discussing are murderers in previous books, but I believe that in this book, their murder slate has been wiped clean, and I should not take that into consideration, even though a part of me is taking into consideration for certain characters. So let's get into it. So Arnold the Blue-Nosed Reindeer, he's new. Um, so I don't have anything to say about him, though I do think it's funny that the copyright is still in effect for Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and not for Mickey Mouse. Get your lawyers up, Mickey, I guess. I don't know what to say to that. But Chef Aubergine. So I love Chef Aubergine. Chef Aubergine is one of the mainstay characters throughout all of the volumes. If I am remembering this right, there are four official volumes. There's a Bordergrams book that I have that's really great, which was in collaboration with another puzzle creator that is not tied to the main story of Deductive Logico, but is sort of like a spin off. Then there's the junior books that are again not contributing to the main story of Deductive Logico, but it is a spin-off of something else. I believe it's about Deductive Logico when he was a kid solving different mysteries. They're not murders, but they're mysteries. And then there is the Deductive Logical School, where we get the prequel to Deductive Logico when he was in Deductive College, which is a thing in this universe. And then there's also the jigsaw puzzles, and then this, right? So I'm saying that all to say I have done all of those, again, aside from the junior books, and there are a lot of recurring characters, and there is a huge story in each volume, but each volume in the next volume carries over the previous volume stories and thoughts and theories, when they make their myrtles. And I don't think that this book is any different. However, I do think that it's a little bit different in the way in which it is handled, because again, I do think that this book was purposely made for new people who have never done a myrtle to pick it up, and so they want to give everybody a fair chance. I say that to say Chef Aubergine is a notorious killer throughout the entire volumes of the book. It When we first get introduced to her in volume one, she is introduced to have potentially killed her husband and cooked him and served him at her restaurant. It is a rumor that she vehemently denies. However, she has cooked and killed other people in the volumes, um, and murdered because of her anger. She does not have the greatest temper. We will never know what happened to her husband and if she did cook him. So it was very funny in this blurb that Chef Aubergine is alleged to cook and serve Santa because she can. Um, does that mean that I think that she is the murderer? No, I don't think she is. I think she is a red herring and a gag character at best. I will get into my thoughts and theories as I keep going. Hack Blackston. Hack Blackston is also a known killer in the books, but just like his blurb said, he is a writer. He ends up writing the script for Volume 1, and being involved in a huge conspiracy. I will try not to spoil Volume 1, but if I do, I apologize and I will say what is a spoiler, what's not. But basically, he is very heavily involved in the overarching mystery of Volume One. And whenever he shows up, it is usually about him murdering and or being involved in a huge mystery because he wants his screenplays to go through. All of his screenplays are trash, but because Midnight the Third, who is also a suspect in this, usually Midnight the Third or one of the Midnights, because there are three of them. Midnight I think it's either the second or the fourth is also a character, but then goes away. So that's why Midnight the Third is so prominent. But Midnight the Third usually works with Hack Blackston when it comes to adapting the screenplays, and it's very funny because usually Midnight the Third will purchase and or do something with Hack Blackston's screenplay, that he wrote and then completely change it. And there's a lot of conflict with that. Keep that in the back of your mind. There's Chess Boxer Blaze. Chess Boxer Blaze is literally that. She's just a chess boxer. Um, and I love her for that. Has she murdered? No. As far as my Rolodex of memory is gone, she's always been a suspect but never been a murderer. However, whenever Chessboxer Blaze is there, usually Grandmaster Rose is there. They have this really big rivalry throughout the books that never really gets fully addressed as to why. And also, to my knowledge and memory, Chessboxer Blaze never punched Grandmaster Rose, but I think they just have that rivalry, like who's better in chess overall. And Chessbox and Grandmaster Rose feels a little bit more elitist because Chessboxer Blaze boxes as well. Then there's Crime Queen Caramel, my girly, my good Judy ma'am. She is most definitely a murderer. She has murdered so many times, but not just so many times. She has been involved in a lot of big overarching mysteries, not just Volume One, but I believe Volume Three as well. Um, yeah, I love crime scene. I love crime Cucaro. You know why? Because she just comes in at just random points in time, and you're like, "Girl, Ariana, what are you doing here?" And then it's just like, reveal. I'm actually still bitter about uh something. Oh, also another thing that wasn't mentioned in this specific blurb, but does get mentioned later. Um, Crime Queen Caramel, Dame Obsidian, who I will get to because I have a dissertation on my good Judy man, Dame Obsidian. But Crime Queen Caramel, Dame Obsidian, and one other girly that we have never got to hear about or find out about were part of like the crime queen trio, if you will. They were like the heads of the crime world when it comes to writing mystery books and murder books, until eventually somebody, or however that was, um, murdered the third girlie, who again we never find out who she was. And so Crime Queen Caramel ends up being in hiding for a while, and then she comes out of hiding in Volume One due to Dame Obsidian. They really again have this huge big rivalry, but it's funny because Crime Queen Caramel thinks that like she has this like it's giving like Ash and Ash's rival. It's giving like blue and red, right? It's Gary. There we go. It's giving Ash and Gary. Gary Oak. I'm saying this right. It's been a while for Pokemon. Anyway, it's giving like that rival who thinks that they're like at the same level as the main character, but the main character doesn't care. That's essentially what's happening. So Crime Queen Caramel thinks like, yeah, Dame's my biggest rival and she's shook by me, and Dame is just like, who? And it's very funny because every time Crime Queen Caramel comes in, and she's like, yeah, I bet you weren't expecting to see me, Dame, and Dame is just like, who? So yeah, she's most definitely a murderer. I just think that she's here for the fun and the joy of it. And we'll get to that later. There's Sherman Chalk. Now, I'm gonna bounce around just a little bit because certain characters are like directly linked and tied to each other. So Chairman Chalk and Agent Ink. So Chairman Chalk is the chairman of a book company. He's basically, think of him like Jeff Bezos. He is the owner of Amazon, but also he owns other things other than Amazon and is in charge of other things other than Amazon, if that makes sense. So Chairman Chalk is basically like your umbrella for anything that is not TechCo Futures, because TechCo Futures is separate from Chairman Chalk. Please make note of that. But he is over books, he's over literature, and in this world too, books are very expensive and writers are treated like celebrities in this world. Also make note of that. So for him to be over the book industry is basically like him being over the music industry. Very very rich. He owns other companies as well, and so far that hasn't came into play, but I would just like to specify that. So I say that all to say he is a rich billionaire, big Billy Band B, but he is also the head of a publishing company that Agent Inc. is a part of. And so throughout the previous volumes, Agent Inc. has been doing stuff to basically win Chairman Chalk's favor, but also has in sometimes been Chairman Chalk's lackey to do certain very shady businesses and deals. Funnily enough, Chairman Chalk was able to deploy and use Agent Inc. to convince Logico to create a book series that ended up becoming a movie series in this world, that book series being Myrtle, and that movie series being Myrtle as well. So the book gets very meta as well. The book knows that it's a book, but it's not a book, if that makes sense. I do not think that that is the case this book, but in previous books, it usually is the case. So yeah, Chairman Chalk has murdered. I think he has murdered once, and even then he did it in accident. I believe that was volume 2, because volume 2 was the spoopy volume where there was a lot more like Scooby-Doo mystery gang mysteries. And okay, spoiler, wee. There's a moment in the books, I believe it was volume 2, if not volume 3, where Dame Obsidian is locked up in her house and she's going crazy and she says that she could see monsters. And anybody that goes into her house also sees monsters. And so Deductive Logico goes in, and there's a lot of murders that happens as well. And so I believe Chairman Chalk was one of the people that murdered somebody on accident, because turns out they actually weren't monsters in the house. Turns out Dame Obsidian's carbon monoxide alarm um, was off and out of battery, and so everybody that was in the room was getting carbon monoxide poisoning and was hallucinating people being monsters, and so accidentally killed real people because they believed that they were monsters. And so luckily, Inspector Irrational figured that out and was able to pull Deductive Logico and everyone out of the house, and that's how it's funnily solved. So I believe Chairman Chuck was involved in that. Um, but other than that, I don't believe he himself has murdered anybody. So that is something to note. Agent Inc. is also someone who, going through my Rolodex, has never had to murder anybody, but has been involved in the murders or have influenced other people to murder. She's also one to not get her hands dirty. Um, but a lot of the murders in question are usually to lock in a book deal or working with Dame Obsidian, who's absolutely a murderer. So that way she could be in charge of publishing the books and get the credit and the claim and the accolades. Um, Agent Inc. also had a competitor. I forget what that competitor's name was, but she swiftly and quickly eliminated her, and she's no longer mentioned in the books after volume 1. So I just want you to know that both Chairman Chalk and Agent Inc. are very big persons of interest based off of my knowledge of them, because really, especially when it comes to Agent Inc., again, I think Chairman Chalk might have killed someone, but it wasn't on purpose, it was on accident. But both of them are the type of people who will get other people to murder because they don't want to get their own hands dirty, which is the whole point of the book. Then there's Mrs. Claus. She is a new character, and I will reserve my thoughts towards the end on this. Then there is Scientific Evergreen. Sorry, needed a water break. Then there's Scientific Evergreen. Scientific Evergreen is someone that comes in the later volumes. I believe I want to say 3, maybe even 4. I want to say 3 though. Um, Scientific Evergreen is basically your mad scientist, if you will. However, I do like Scientific Evergreen's existence because she really just be popping in and out, and I love that for her, or him. I'm sorry, I will mispronoun people not on purpose. But I'm just used to calling the girlies regardless on their gender, because I feel like girlies can be I won't go into that discussion. Scientific Evergreen, he's basically a mad scientist. He's willing to do anything to prove his thoughts and theories. Um, but other than that, not a murderer as far as I remember, and also very briefly mentioned in the books. Then there's Assistant Elf Greenie. They are new. Um, one of Santa's helpers. I don't really have thoughts and opinions on that yet. Mr. Grayman is also a very prevalent character, and I love Mr. Grayman because it is very clear that Mr. Grayman's an alien. But because Deductive Logico does not believe in aliens, he finds up any excuse to explain why he looks the way he looks or talks the way that he talks. But he was a very prevalent reason and suspect in Volume 1 when there was a lot of UFO stuff going on, but also Mr. Greenwood was a way to expose the truth versus being the murder themselves. So I don't think that I will get into my thoughts on who I think who and what is what later, but I just wanted to give context on characters in that. CEO Indigo. CEO Indigo is very annoying to me because I feel like there's so much that CEO Indigo can be involved in and do, but anytime CEO Indigo and subsequently Vice President Mauve are introduced, they are murderers, but their murders don't add to the main story. Usually they don't add to the main story at all, and it's very frustrating because it's like I would love to see like Elon Musk as character in Myrtle have more character because you could do so much with it. I dare I say Vice President Mauve has a little bit more presence than CEO Indigo. A lot of the time the murders that CEO Indigo doesn't even, it doesn't relate to the overarching story, but also the murder that they do usually is very nonsensical and does not help their cause, and in fact ruins it. And maybe that's also the comedy of it all, because we could think of some other people who do that and it's very dumb. This is not a political channel. I just said the facts. And so, um, yeah, CEO Indigo and Vice President Mauve, they're my least favorite characters in the fact that they don't really have much of a personality other than tech. And as someone who is in the tech field, that's pretty boring to me. Give me something a little bit more spicy. Give me something a little bit more of an edge. Like, I will get to the characters I'm thinking about because they're my thoughts later. But there are two other characters that are super interesting and add a little bit more flavor from previous books that I think potentially are in this book, and we will talk about that. Inspector Irrational. So, fun thing about Inspector Irrational. Inspector Irrational was someone that was involved in a murder and was kidnapped, and Deductive Logical was able to save them. And I'm using they them pronouns because for the most part, uh the Inspector Irrational and Logico use he they pronouns, and so sometimes they use he and sometimes they use they, and I don't really know what preference they have sometimes, but they are in a relationship, they are a couple. And one of the big overarching stories in both volumes 1 and 2 is people taking their relationship seriously because they are the same gender. um and I love that for them. They are very cute. But another big thing to note, I'm going to be saying that a lot. There should be a counter for it. Is that deductive logico is very logical. He believes in science in the real world, whereas Inspector Rational believes in the other world, the spiritually, right? So all of Volume 2 is basically Inspector Irrational's book to try to prove to deductive logico that like ghosts and spirits in the afterlife exist, whereas Logico's just like, no, it doesn't, and I'm going to use my logic to explain. But Inspector Rational has their own way of solving cases, using their spiritual medium tarot carding, which in the book they call tarot cards. Did you know that tarot cards is copyright? Like saying the word tarot card in a book, you have to like pay. I did not know that. And so in the book, they use marrow cards because good on you for not paying money for something ridiculous like the blue nose reindeer. Um, so Inspector Rational being a suspect does not surprise me because Inspector Rational has also killed people to prove a point to deductive logico, which is hilarious. I think Inspector Rational has done it at least twice in my Rolodex, to basically be like either to help the overarching plot overall or to prove a point to deductive logico about there being spiritual mediums and stuff and stuff. And they do have their fights about it and they end up making up for it. But I do love that Inspector Rational is a suspect here. And it makes sense that they're a suspect, even though they're Deductive Logico's partner, because this is something that Inspector Rational has done before. Um, Now we're talking about Midnight the Third. I love Midnight the Third so much because he's such a dumb character, and I love that for him. He basically inherited a whole bunch of wealth, and Midnight the Third is also a huge part in volume. I keep mentioning Volume One, but Volume One was truly iconic. For the girlies that get it, get it. The girlies that don't, don't. I made a whole video about it. Make sure you go back in that video and watch it. I cannot also remember if I finished talking about Volume One. Now that I talk about the video. The girlies are gonna get it, the girlies I don't know. Anyway, Midnight the Third is a huge, crucial part of Volume 1, and Volume 3, not as crucial. But Midnight the Third uses his infinite wealth and money and privilege to make these very big fantastical movies in generational progression, keeping down the Midnight Studios. It was a whole big takeover scheme thing. Midnight the Third has killed numerous people to get what he wants, and also to get the studio and to get the money and fame and accolades. He actually ends up using uh, so he ends up working with Dame, Agent Ink, and Chairman Chalk, and also Hack Blackston and Silverton the Legend. That group, that Gaggling group, tends to work and operate a lot because usually at the horcrux of the overarching mysteries, it usually has to deal with money, capitalism, or like Dame, because Dame is going to be the main character whether you like it or not. Very iconic behavior. Do not ask any questions about this diva. She is RuPaul. She is the moment. She is going to clock your tea and ask you to sashay away if she wants to, because this is her show. This is her book, honestly. And we will get to it when we get to it, but I'm trying to stay focused on Midnight the Third. So I say this to say, usually anytime Midnight the Third is a suspect, it usually has some dealing with a movie that he's trying to make and trying to profit off of. And usually he works with Dame Obsidian, Hack Blackston, Agent Ink, and Chairman Chalk to do, because they have something to stand to gain from it as well. In this world, usually movies are made based off of books, and that is the succession of it. Very rarely have I seen in the Myrtle books movie being made just solely for the movie being made. And so sometimes a book needs to be made, and because of that, people go to Dame. And so Dame only makes books based off of real life events, and so she enacts said real life events, so that way the murder and the mystery is a lot more realistic. So I'm saying that to say I would not be surprised if Midnight the Third is involved, but is not the actual person that hired, because he also has killed before. I'm skipping over Dame because I want to have more time to talk about her, and I want her to have her own little section. Major Red. Okay, okay. So if I were to, I could be honest with y'all, right? I have no choice but to be, because this is my video and I can do whatever I want. Um, I did not really like Volume 2, the Draconia situation. And I say that with a loving heart. Because again, I'm trying to remember, Volume 2 was the swoopy volume, it was the purple book. I really did not like the warring faction situation. There was a whole bunch of like politics that was going on. It was a little bit hard for even me to follow when it came to the story. And so I say that to say Major Red was a huge part of the Draconian War. And for the girlies that get it. The girlies that don't, good. Um, I really did not like the Draconian War back and forth. It was very confusing. By the time I got to the end of it, I was very happy that the story was done. But if you were to ask me to recant what exactly happened with the takeover and why Major Red is such an important character, I would look at you like this. And then we will move on. And so I'm just going to do just that. I don't think Major Red is involved. I do think that he is a red herring at best. But it is funny that Major Red is here. Major Red just likes appearing when he wants to. Grandmaster Rose, I've already talked about him. He just likes chess. I will say, and I don't think they do it in this book. If so, then I will point it out when it is there. But whenever Grandmaster Rose is involved, excuse me, in the Myrtles, or mentioned in the Myrtles, every description is a chess move, and if you follow the chess moves, then you could basically play against Grandmaster Rose and see if you would win against them. And I think that's really fun. I do love a good chess, but I do not know chess based off of the places on the board. But if I did know that, I would play along to see if I could beat Grandmaster Rose or if I would lose to Grandmaster Rose. Um, and usually in the solutions, it tells you like what the moves look like in a real chessboard. Um, Ebenezer Rouge is new. Silverton the Legend. Silverton the Legend is basically like, okay, I'm going to say something, and I may get disowned by the black community by saying this, but Silverton the Legend is sort of like Denzel Washington, if that makes sense. You know what? Look, let me take that back before I lose my black card. Silverton the Legend is sort of like Will Smith, right? Where he had such a really great career when he was young, but now that he's older, he really can't really get into the movie scenes as he usually does. And so he tries to like get in with certain movies and stuff, but then doesn't. Like, he's sort of a washed up has been, and I'm not saying that Will Smith is. I'm saying like he was someone that was a legend and wants to still be a legend in his old age and does not know how to let go. Does that make sense? I feel like I roasted both Denzel Washington and Will Smith unintentionally, trying to get my point across on what it means. But I just he's someone that is past his prime. I'm digging myself into a hole. He's someone that is past his prime. Um but he still tries to get in movies anyway and uses previous success to get in said movies. And so a lot, and then he usually gets the role. He usually does murder for said role. He is a big murderer throughout the Myrtle books. Um but then when he gets the role, he usually does not play it well, or he tries to edit the character. And so a lot of the time, the Midnight the Third, who ends up hiring him a lot, and Hack Blackson, who also puts Silverton in mind for certain things, they really get tired of his stuff. And so I would not be surprised if they got tired of his stuff in this book, hired him, and then was just like goodbye. But yeah, he is a murderer. He is a murderer. Captain Slate, love this girl. Love her down. House down boots. Another iconic character. Captain Slate will murder you and then go up to the moon and say, "What are you going to do about it?" Um, Captain Slate did, in fact, murder her co pilot. And we find out the reason why in one of the books. It's because she did not want her co pilot to get as much fame as her. And so she thought she will murder them and make it look like an accident, which the world universally thinks it is, but there's still conspiracy theories that she killed him, and she did. Again, mainly because she didn't want him to have the spotlight and she wanted to have all the spotlight to herself. It is funny though, because we find out that after murdering him, she was stranded in space for a little bit and did need to be rescued, and was thinking about killing her rescuer but decided not to. Um, so yeah, love Captain Slate, love her. If she's going to murder someone, she's going to do it for the purpose of her gaining fame. And just out the gate for me, I don't think that she would murder or kidnap Santa, because it doesn't deal with anything that she does. Um yeah, like what her description said. Santa gave her coal, she used it for fuel. And what are you going to do about it? Thank you for the gift, Santa. Like that's sort of her attitude. I just love the divas, okay? And there was a quote said by a very iconic person that I can't remember, but everyone loves a diva until they have to meet one. This is one of those instances where it's like you don't want to admit that she's a diva, but she is. But you don't want to meet her because she would probably die. And that's exactly what's going on. Then there's Ski Pro Sunflower. I would like to say that this is a new character. However, I would not be surprised if they showed up in 3 and I just forgot. Um, but yeah, love that for them. Truth or Topaz is a character that does come up whenever it comes to conspiracy theories. Usually Truth or Topaz does not murder anybody, but is usually there for the murder to happen and then uses those murders to justify his thoughts and theories. Truth or Topaz has came up before to try to prove the existence of Bigfoot, and that became a big thing in volumes 3, I want to say. And obviously Bigfoot was not real. Turns out it was something else. But Truth or Topaz is usually one of those like annoying side characters that come in. It's like, but actually, like basically, Truth or Topaz is the reflection of Logico and how he sounds when like so. Inspector Irrational is crazy to Logico, and then Logico is crazy to Truth or Topaz, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? Like, and a lot of the time that Truth or Topaz comes up, Logico is like, "Oh my god, is that how I sound to Inspector Rational? Like I'm a know-it-all and like everything is so whatever, whatever." And then there's Chancellor Tuscany. Chancellor Tuscany was actually the chancellor slash head of the college that Deductive Logico went to in Deductive College. And one thing about Chancellor Tuscany is that she has been framed for numerous murders. She has also potentially done a lot of murders and stuff, right? But every time she is found as the suspect of the murderer or found as the person that murdered, turns out she actually did not murder that person, and it was a setup or a staging or a clue to Logico to look in a certain way, but she's never actively done it. Um so I would like to put that in note that if she is found as the murderer, um it's probably because she's trying to leave a clue more so than she actually did murder anyone. And then, last but certainly not least, Mr. Tuxedo. Yes, this penguin is a reoccurring character, and I love this character. This penguin will murder just for the hell of it, just because he can. He's also used a lot as a weapon in the books, and so the fact that he went from a weapon to an actual character in volumes 2 and 3 was actually very iconic. There's really usually no rhyme or reason to when Mr. Tuxedo murders. Um, but I will say that the Christmas penguin idea is something that I do think he is murdering for the thought of, because Mr. Tuxedo is very self-serving. Um yeah, yeah, that is something very big to note. And so with that, I've gone through all the characters and given my ribbon rumbles aside from Dame, because Dame gets her own section because that's how iconic she is. If there was a Myrtle movie, which I don't even know how they would be able to do it, but if there was a Myrtle movie, first off, best believe that I'm the first to purchase the ticket. Second off, Dame better be played by like an Eartha Kitt esque character. Like I want the Devil Wears Prada part 5, okay, when it comes to Dame, because that is what she deserves. Okay? That is what she needs. And y'all will understand the hype when I get into my Dame Obsidian section. Hello everyone. This is me, Calmer, in the Dame Obsidian section. And let me just tell you something, okay? I do not think that Dame Obsidian was the one to hire the person. However, I do think that she is involved in the overarching story about where Santa Claus is, and I do think she is a murderer. You know why? Because she has murdered just for the hell of it, just for the fun of it. The first volume of Myrtle, my very first time picking up a Myrtle book, even understanding and knowing what it was, right when it fresh off the presses got here. Book of the month, by the way, as it should be. One of the first book of the month books that I got. Good on you, Barnes and Noble. You guessed right. Um, y'all just don't understand how iconic she is. All of Volume 1 was the Dame Obsidian show, and we were just all witnessing it. It really became less about Deductive Logico and what Dame Obsidian was doing today. It was giving very much so like from the Scarlet Witch, Agatha all along. It was very much so giving Agatha all along. Spoiling volume 1, and I will. And I will, and this is the section to spoil it. Wee. If you do not want to be spoiled about Volume 1 of Myrtle, I'm going to spoil a lot of it. Dame Obsidian is the main reason for Volume 1. It is because she has found out about Deductive Logico and decided to use him to not only promote her new book on murders that she was enacting, but also to get him to get into the book industry so that way she could gain and benefit profit off of it using Agent Ink. But then also, I need you to know that she murdered someone, right? And then it is like a huge thing, and Deductive Logical was able to string not only that one specific murder, but to prove that she murdered her own husband and is buried in the back of the yard, right? And also a whole bunch of other murders that she did in her own hood that he discovered this, right? He was just like, "You're going to jail, you're going to prison, you're going underneath the jail cell," and I'm just like, yes, as she should. A lot of the other murderers should have gotten that shine, but it doesn't matter because this is Dame Obsidian. And Dame is just like, okay, bet. You want to take me to prison? You want to take me to prison? Is that what you want to do? Cool. And so there's a whole courtroom scene of murders that happen during the courtroom preceding Dame Obsidian's trial. And you think, oh my goodness gracious, Dame really out here setting up whole murders to happen in the trial to get it to be a mistrial. But believe it or not, follow me, camera. Uh, one of the one of the characters that does not come back up again, there is a character that was framed for a murder the first couple of myrtles that Deductive Logic was like, yep, this person did it. And it was in this like very fancy mansion, right? I forget her name, but let's call her Victim. And so Victim, because she really was a victim. So Deductive Logico in this Myrtle, right, says, "Hey, Victim, you killed this person based off of the evidence." And Victim is just like, "No, it wasn't me. You got to believe me, Bessie. It wasn't. I know the evidence looks like it, but it wasn't me." And so Deductive Logic's like, "Yeah. That's what they all say." She goes to prison, right? She loses her job. I think she was like some sort of parking lot, whatever the case may be. She did. Sorry, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. Um, she had a really substantial job. She lost her job. She had a whole trial going on. And so during said trial, right? During said trial, she tries to murder Dame and fails. Victim tries to murder Dame and fails because she realizes, and Deductive Logical realizes as well, which is why Dame is also in prison right now or going through the court case. Oh, actually, Dame was the one to set up Victim because she wanted to basically use this for her book. All of this is for her books. All of this is for her books, her coin, her bag, her money, her moolah, her cha-ching, okay? Her doll hairs. And I think that is so iconic because of the way that she does it. Anyways, she sets a victim, gets her to prison, and Dame's initial plan with victim was to just let her like sit in prison for a little bit, and then when she goes to prison, because she planned that she was going to be arrested and go to prison, all of this was going according to her plan, she would release her, right? But then the court cases happen, a lot of murders happen to try to distract, a whole like criminal organization with the cop and everything is exposed. Someone ends up murdering someone else just to make sure Dame Obsidian goes to prison. It is a whole shit show in the courtroom, right? But eventually Dame Obsidian is found guilty of murder and gets sent to a very luxurious prison, which is where victim is, right? Ooh, and so as Dame is on her way to the prison, and or while she's in the prison, victim ends up killing Dame Obsidian, right? And so after victim got out of prison, so basically Dame went into prison, victim got out of prison, because now she was found not guilty for the murder that happened. And so before she ended up getting released, she ended up killing Dame and was just like, yeah, I murdered her. I don't mind being in prison. This is a luxury prison. And so the people are like, actually, since you murdered a rich person, you're not allowed to be in rich person prison anymore. You're going to be now in poor people prison, which is a lot more dangerous and stuff. And so we're like, oh my God, not my good Judy ma'am Dame. She died. She's dead. The villainess herself, the one that even planned for her to go into prison and all of these other murders, and to get Logico to come out of his shell and to set this up and release books while she was in prison. And she knew that it will go platinum because she's in prison herself and she gets to basically do memoir stuff because she's bored, because she's an old bored lady and that is what you do. Okay. But then, would you believe me? Plot twist, shake it up. Zoe 101. I don't know. I'm doing my best here. She turns out she's not dead. Victim ended up killing a random person that looked like Dame Obsidian. Dame already escaped prison, already in her home, cozy, chilling. And she goes, yeah, I used victim because I wanted to get into prison. I felt like that was the best way to do it. And I was planning on her to just be released and I was going to give her money. But then after I knew and found out that she was trying to kill me, I escaped, set up a dummy, and then I made sure that she went into bad girl prison because how dare you try to kill me? Who do you think you are? And honestly, who did she think? Like, I feel bad for victim. I do, because it was very random how victim was chosen for this. Dane was just like, I just chose whoever to get this done. But the fact that she really thought she could kill me, hilarious. You're going to jail. Like she Una reversed prison. She somehow Una reversed prison when she should be underneath the jail cell herself. Do you know how, oh, like, so iconic? And then that's not even the best part. The best part is there's a whole ancient ruins thing, and I will get to it. I will get to it because that in of itself is its own deep dive. But basically, she manipulates Chairman Chalk and Midnight the Third and everybody for this huge cover up that require. There's not enough time in the day for me to gush about how much I love Dame Obsidian. And this is just only volume one. Dame Obsidian has been always prevalent and prominent in each and every single volume that she is in, which is literally each and every single volume, aside from the prequel, which is Logico's college experience in deductive college, right? But like, Dame is an icon. She's the legend. She's the moment. Anytime you see that little hat that she has, I may put a picture up here if Editriana feels up to it. Watch out, because you are going to be involved in a scheme. It's her world. We're all just graciously living in it if she chooses for us to be in it. That is the Dame section. What does this have to do with the mystery? Nothing. But I just wanted to just let you guys know how iconic she is. And anytime she's on the screen and in the book, I do like a little ooh, because I'm bracing myself. I am. The twists and turns that Myrtle has done and just how nonsensical the real overarching stories can be, Dame is usually at the center of it. But since it's about who's a murderer, who's not, I do not think that she is the actual person that hired them, because she will murder, she will get her hands dirty, and she'll do it for fun. And who's going to stop her? Right. And so I say this to say, I do think that Dame Obsidian is involved in the overarching mystery. I do not think that she is the actual suspect. Is it ridiculous that I spent almost 9 minutes talking about one character? Maybe, but also, this is my YouTube. So now I will talk about my initial thoughts after looking at everybody and knowing the knowledge that I know. And then from there, I will do my daily myrtles. Again, I have already done up until day 13. I have not done 13 yet, so you get my raw reaction to it. But I will be giving you my thoughts that I have jotted down for each day up until today. So, I know what you guys are thinking. I know what you guys are thinking. Tiana, you just spent like damn near probably an hour. I don't know how long I've been talking at this point, but you spent damn near an hour talking about the characters and your extensive knowledge. And even then, you didn't even scratch the surface. But who do you think did it? Just based off a rip of my knowledge of myrtles and how they go, who do you think it is? I actually think my initial thought, my out of the gate thought, was Mrs. Claus. And I will tell you why. Usually, in a myrtle, GT Carver loves a good reveal. He loves a good plot twist. He loves a good character is not the same character. And there are two characters so far that I remember distinctively who acted as a character but was not that character and then changes. There is Castaway Sable. Now, Castaway Sable is literally that. She was a castaway who lived on this very tiny island with only one coconut tree, and she was like basically abandoned for years. And so she literally just loses her identity. And so when she's rescued by Deductive Logico and gang, it is a very comical a thing that she comes up as a suspect, but she changes her identity each time because she now has the freedom to be whoever she wants to be. So I would not be surprised if Mrs. Claus is not actually Mrs. Claus, but actually another previous recurring character as a plot twist, and or somebody else who was spiteful or scorned in the process. So I would not be surprised if Mrs. Claus is Castaway Stable, um, or there's another character in the fourth volume, which was the skulls, the seven skulls of something, I believe it was called. Um, where basically it's like Deductive Logico doing an Indiana Jones and finding the seven crystal skulls. But the lady who is basically competing to find them, I forget her name, but she also is a shapeshifter, and you have to like make note of her height, weight, like what she looks like and everything, because she may be acting as one character and then you realize, oh, actually this is, I will call her Carmen Sandiego just for the brevity and not me just saying. So Miss Carmen Sandiego of Myrtle will shapeshift into any other character, um but she will still keep the same height or hair or looks, and then when you call her out on it, she'll change it up. At one point in time, uh she looked like she was acting as two little kids in a trench coat, but turns out it was her. Very iconic character. So I do think that potentially, right? Follow me, camera. I think that Mrs. Claus is either Castaway Sable or she is Miss Carmen Sandiego character or somebody else, right? And then I think that because in the first story, remember she's a suspect in the first story as well. I think that she is at the North Pole, right? Because, okay, I'm doing this in real time to make sure that I'm saying this right. So, Mrs. Claus, and this is the preamble, one of the weapons in question is a copy of Merry Myrtle, which is the book that we have. Again, this book gets really meta. So, what if, right? Follow me, camera. She had a Merry Myrtle mystery book at the post office. So, what if Mrs. Claus is somebody else, right? And is working with Agent Ink, Dame Obsidian, Chairman Chalk, the likes of them, and is basically given, okay, let me say it the way that I think, because I'm really trying to like do it. What I think happened is Dame Obsidian was just like, it's Christmas time and I need a Christmas murder mystery. And you know what I should do? I want to involve Logico because this is not the first time that she's involved Logico so that she can make her own books. And so she's like, let me involve Logico real fast. Let me make up a manuscript of a Myrtle book to lure Logico into like this overarching mystery. And let me convince Mrs. Claus, who is not actually Mrs. Claus, but we don't know that. And I don't even think Dame would know that yet at this point. But let me send her a manuscript and a proposal of being a part of my book or being a part of the movie. So that way she kidnaps Santa Claus, right? So that way she gets to make the book out of the myrtles and mysteries that Logico solves, right? And then after the book is done, then she works with Midnight the Third, who will then work with Hack Blackston to make the movie based off of the book, right? And Asian Ink is involved in all of this because she is Dame Obsidian's like publisher, and she also wants to get the money but also get the praise and recognition for being a part of this holiday Christmas scheme. And remember what it said in Chairman Chalk's description, that he put a bet that the Christmas novels would go crazy because Chairman Chalk also knew about this plan. So I am saying the big scheme is Dame Obsidian and Co., but mainly Dame Obsidian, has set up this huge scheme to kidnap Santa so that way she can make her murder books based off of the murders that Logico follows through and she is a part of, but also that way Hack Blackston can make his screenplay, get it picked up by Midnight the Third. Midnight the Third changes it to where it's great. Silverton the Legend ends up becoming the actor in said movie, even though he's not the best actor, but the movie is a smash hit because it is based off of real life. Because then the public finds out that Santa Claus is actually kidnapped, but then turns out there is or isn't a Santa. It does not matter. And Agent Ink and Chairman Chalk benefit off of it because they get the proceeds and the recognition and fame from it. But I think Mrs. Claus is the one that kidnapped him. Did that make sense? I think so to me. But that is my knowledge because, again, like I said, usually when it comes to these books, there is a big overarching twist. And if Dame is in it, Dame is involved in one way, shape, or form or another. And she's usually not the good guy or the bad guy for that point. She's usually very self serving. And the fact that her and Midnight the Third are there, and Hack Blackson, and Agent Ink, and Chairman Chalk, I feel like all of them are involved. But the question is, who ordered General Coffee to kidnap? I think it was Mrs. Claus. And I think Mrs. Claus is going to turn out to be someone else. I think that she may be Sable. I think that she may be Mrs. Carmen Sandiego, or she might be a third character that we don't know. Maybe Mrs. Claus did it because of the Christmas Penguins idea is a lot better. Or maybe she's just tired of the factory. I don't know. But that was my first initial thought, that I thought that there would be a huge reveal in Mrs. Claus and that Mrs. Claus turns out to be someone else, but is working with Dame Obsidian and Co. to basically have this huge money laundering scheme to kidnap Santa Claus, so that way they could get their book and their movie off and it become a smash hit. And they use this to lure deductive Logico to solve these murders that otherwise would not have been prevalent or important, to then make their book and make their movie based off of everything. Because how do you have a copy of Myrtle Mystery if it hasn't happened yet? That is very, like, as much as they are meta, they only make Myrtle books possible if it was made by Dame Obsidian and predicted by her, or those Myrtles have already happened. But at this point, the Myrtles hadn't happened yet. So how did Mrs. Claus get a copy of Mary Myrtle? It must be because Dame Obsidian made a manuscript of it and predicted that is what happened, because this has happened in volumes 1, 2, and 3 when Dame was involved. I'm not crazy, you are. And so that is my first initial thought on who I think kidnapped Santa or hired General Coffee to kidnap Santa. Also, fun fact, I also love General Coffee, and this is a very trippy thing for me because I'm not sure why General Coffee was chosen as the person to kidnap, because usually and historically, General Coffee is only present when there are coffee murders afoot because he really likes coffee shops and he's very particular about it. There's another character called Earl Grey that is not in this, but he is basically like General Coffee but make a tea. But General Coffee only murders in coffee shops or coffee related murders. And this is not in a coffee shop or a coffee related murder. So I'm very surprised that he was the one that kidnapped. And I feel like maybe that has something to do with something as well. Like maybe he was hired in a coffee shop. I don't know, but very rarely does General. I mean, he's usually a paid assassin. That is very true as well. But like, usually it happens in a coffee shop or it is a coffee related murder. This to me is not a coffee shop or a coffee related murder, unless Mrs. Claus ends up being like the head of a coffee company, or maybe Mrs. Claus is Earl Grey. I don't know. I don't know. I'm still chewing on that. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. And so, dear friends and readers, that is my initial thoughts, preamble, all that other stuff. From here on out, spoiler, wee wee wee, and I will make sure to timestamp. Editor Tiana, please make sure you timestamp. But I will be timestamping my thoughts and opinions for each day, starting with December 1st, and I will be discussing each day and my thoughts and opinions there. Again, today is December 13th. Happy birthday, T. Um, so I will be talking up until the 13th. If the background and outfit and stuff changes, just know that it is a different day, a different time, a different period in my life. But I'm going to do my best to make sure that I keep up with this and do videos when I can. So that way this is uploaded by Christmas. If it is uploaded by Christmas, it is not only a Christmas treat to y'all, but a Christmas treat to me to be able to record and edit on time. We'll see. But if not, I'm giving myself the grace and space for it to be after Christmas, and this is an after Christmas treat. So, with all that being said, spoilers ahead. I will go day by day. If you would like to follow along, feel free. Friend, if you would like to follow along after you do your thing and you could have your own thoughts and mysteries and stuff, I will not spoil the next day ahead. I will only focus on the day that I am talking about. And let's jump into it and figure out who hired General Coffee to kidnap Santa and what is the overarching story. I think at this point, with no knowledge, it is Mrs. Claus. Due to the reasons that I said, I think Dame Obsidian and Co. have this holiday book and movie scheme, and have used Mrs. Claus to do so. And Mrs. Claus does not realize that she was used in the grand scheme of things. And also, Mrs. Claus is not actually Mrs. Claus. I think that she may be Castaway Sable, Miss Carbon San Diego, or another character that is new and has their own self-serving plot. But they were generally used for Dame Obsidian. I am surprised my mic is lasting this long because it's still green. Okay, so we are on December 1st. And just so that you guys get a nice little look of how it looks like, this is uh every 5 days, is it? Are broken up into acts. Yeah. Every 5 days are broken up into acts. So this is what Act 1 looks like. And we're in different locations. So Act 1 will entail 5 of the days / 5 of the murders. So basically, Logico doesn't believe in Santa. He's seen a lot of things from the case of the Seven Skulls, which, remember, the case of the Seven Skulls is where the Miss Carmen San Diego girl is, where he finds the hidden skulls, but it leads into another thing. But basically, he's debating on whether or not Santa exists and why there is a need for a workshop. He's at the North Pole and he needs to find out what's going on. He ends up listening to Truth or Topaz on the radio and he sounds crazy. And then he's like, is that what I sound like to Inspector Irrational? Like I'm just crazy because I'm so deep in my own thoughts. And so he is going to have to solve it a day to figure out if he believes in Santa or not. That is essentially what the Act 1 preamble is. The next act preamble will be a little bit more detailed, so I'll probably read it out in full, but I just wanted to give the gist because it wasn't really saying anything crazy. So then this is what day 1 looks like. It is very nicely put. But okay, December 1st, around the world. 'Twas the 1st of December, and Logico said, I can't drop everything for a guy who's not dead. Very true. Very true. He usually only follows murders, which we call myrtles in the world. Uh, and then the mystery overarching usually comes with it. And so it says, if Deductive Logico was going to solve 25 mysteries in 25 days, then he was going to have to work fast, and that meant looking for murders to solve. And there is no better way to learn about all the horrible things happening in the world than to read the news. So, Logico picked up a newspaper, and he read it from cover to cover. He learned about the political turmoil in Draconia. I do not want to address it. I don't. I really don't. Just know that there was a war, there were factions, there were rich, there were poor. It was the French Revolution, it was Les Mis, it was Hamilton, it was all of that in one. I do not have the time or patience to really get into the Draconian Wars. Just know that there was a Draconian War. Major Red was a part of it, and he won, and then he lost, and then he won. It's a whole thing. It is a whole thing. We are breezing past it. The gossip in a sleepy English village, the latest concerts and questionable remedies in New Aegis. New Aegis is also a very prevalent place. Think of it as like think of it as like the hipster village or like a hipster version of LA, if that makes sense. Like everybody is like in the 70s perpetually. Blah 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 blah. Even a bit of space news involving the moon, and then he saw it, a murder. There was everything he loved, a cast of suspicious characters, a macabre clue in the form of a bloody manuscript, and best of all, he could solve it from the comfort of his armchair. Logico got out a pencil and sketched out the deduction grid on the newspaper. Then he got to work. Soon he solved the case, determining who done it with what and where. Can you solve it yourself? Okay, so to not get too deep into it, the suspects are Major Red, Ebenezer Rouge, Dame Obsidian, Midnight the Third, and Mr. Grey Man. That is involved in the Sleepy English Village murder, right? And so after going through everything, we find out that it was Dame Obsidian with a manuscript, and it's a new novel, and it has a twist ending. It kills you. So it was Dame Obsidian with this manuscript in a sleepy English village. Now, all that preamble that I just said earlier, I'm not surprised that Dame Obsidian is the first person that we can eliminate from the list. That higher General Coffee. Does this mean that Dame Obsidian is not involved in the situation and what I just said isn't what happened? No, I think that she still is involved in the overarching thing. Especially think about it this way. Why does she have a manuscript? What manuscript is it? Is it about the situation that I was just talking about? Probably. So I say this to say I'm glad she's crossed off first because I know that she's involved in it now, like in the overarching scheme. And I think this only solidifies my point that it was Mrs. Claus. So I'm sticking with Mrs. Claus as who the person is, but other things to note. Um, a Christmas penguin is a weapon, and so this is where the appendix stuff comes in. So there is an appendix where there's different information to note about. So in Appendix A, it talks about a Christmas penguin. And essentially, the Christmas penguin is the replacement on the elf on the shelf. For those that don't know what elf on the shelf is, it's basically an elf that parents purchase to put around during Christmas time to get their kids to act right and to act good in the season. And the elves on the shelves are supposed to be Santa's helpers to listen in and see if the kids are acting right, are on their best behavior, or have been naughty or nice. They report to Santa whether the kids have been naughty or nice, and Santa will present the present based off of that information. So the Christmas penguin is the alternative to it, and it's basically trying to take over Santa's gig. But also the elf's gig, right? Where the Christmas penguin will watch your kids and your deeds, whether it's positive or negative, and report only good things for Santa. Basically, the Christmas penguin is your lawyer to basically get you on the good list. So if you are a naughty person, you will most likely want this Christmas penguin because he will basically only say good things and fight for you to be on the good list instead of the bad list. Um, I say that to say it's very interesting that from the jump, day one, the Christmas penguin is involved as a weapon. And that is another thing to note about myrtles as well. Just because we are crossing people off, you have to take note of everything. You have to take note of who had what, where it happened, and what's going on. So just because Dame Obsidian is not involved because she is a murderer and it's day one, does not mean that her having the manuscript in this English sleepy village is not important. It is probably important that she has this manuscript. It is probably important that Mr. Grayman has this Christmas penguin. Why does he have this? I'm not sure. Why would he need this? Why would an alien need to have someone advocate on his behalf? Maybe he did something bad. Do I think that Mr. Grayman is involved in the overarching story? No. But I just wanted to point out that these characters and these weapons are actually very important. Making sure this mic is on. I'm saying all this to say, I'm glad that Dame is eliminated first. I think that is fantastic. She's eliminated first, but I know that this is only going to be a plot twist in the future. Again, I find it interesting that she had a manuscript and used a manuscript to kill somebody. And I will also say at the back of the book is where, or not back of the book, at the back of the puzzle is where the solution is. And just so that you get a little look see into how the grid looks like and how it looks like when it's solved, if you guys can see that, that's what it looks like. Um, but in the back, when we say yes, it was Dame Obsidian with a manuscript in the Sleepy Village, there's some really important things to note. Before I say that though, and I don't want to lose track, my guess for December 1st on who hired General Coffee is still Mrs. Claus, due to Dame having a manuscript and killing someone, and also what is said here. Because usually once Logico says the solution, there's usually a blur. But remember, he said did this in this newspaper. So it says there was only one downside to solving a murder in the newspapers, and that was you couldn't actually accuse the murderer to their face. But why not? Deductive Logico decided that if he was going to solve a case, at the very least, he should go announce his findings. So Logico boarded the next available flight for the sleepy English village, and he got ready to make this big announcement when he arrived. And on the flight, he looked through his list of 25 suspects and discovered that Dame Obsidian was on the list. She had visited the North Pole and had been a suspect. Well, not anymore, Logical thought, and he crossed her name off the list. He hadn't changed his mind about Santa. It was an obvious impossibility. How could one man deliver all those presents in one night? It was clearly a ridiculous thing to believe, but just in case. And to that I say, why would Dame Obsidian, because she does not live in this sleepy English village, if memory serves me correct, but why would Dame Obsidian kill? Actually, let me take that back. I believe her mansion is in the sleepy English village. But let me rephrase. Why would Dame Obsidian kill someone in her hometown, which she's done before? But why would she kill someone in her hometown with a manuscript and then make sure it's in the newspaper as a mystery, knowing that at this point, Logico's on the case of the Santa kidnapping, unless she knew he would solve it and come to her and be involved in her scheme that she's trying to do, which is making a murder mystery novel and using Logico to enact her plan and also to help Agent Ink and Chairman Chalk get what they want, but also help Midnight the Third have their movie about Santa being missing. I still think it's Mrs. Claus because I think that Mrs. Claus is involved in this, and I do think that Dame was the one to send her the copy of the Myrtle as a way to enact this whole plan, because that is what Dame does. She schemes. She schemes, she plans. If this is Pretty Little Liars, she would be A, and she would have an A layer. For the girlies that get that, get that. The girlies that don't, go watch Mike's Mike. I don't know what to tell you. Um, so I'm saying that to say that is my thoughts on day 1/December 1st of the Myrtle. Okay, we are now on to December 2nd, and it is titled Dame Obsidian's Killer Christmas. So the sleuth that we love went abroad for some clues, and he found not a lead, but a house with the blues. When Deductive Logico arrived at Dame Obsidian's house to accuse her of murder, he found her hosting her annual Christmas party like nothing was wrong. I read in the papers about the murder you committed, Logico told her. Which one? She replied with a laugh, iconic. Can't you leave business for the rest of the year? It's Christmas. The other guests told him that they didn't want him to interrupt their party with an investigation, but it all rang a little hollow because 20 minutes later, when they discovered the dead body of the butler, they all came to him and asked him to work. Figure out who done it, Dame Obsidian said, and save my party. Now, after spending 9 minutes of what I told you about Dame Obsidian, do you think that this murder actually happened as a surprise? As a mystery? Like Dame didn't plan it? In her own home? In her own hood? Just keep that in mind. I want y'all to have the same suspicions of Dame as I have of Dame, and I need us to be on the same page here because okay. Thought Logico. Is she just saying that to make herself look innocent? Deductive Logico investigated the murder, not the first to occur at Dame Obsidian's home. Not the first. And certainly not the last. Can you solve it yourself? And so the suspects here are Dame Obsidian. Need y'all to follow me, camera, what I said in the beginning of the video. And I promise you, those were my genuine thoughts before I even looked at a day. I made sure to note I'm telling you guys in chronological order my thoughts and feelings based off of each day. Just want that to be known. Uh, First suspect is Dame. Next is Chairman Chalk. Next is Crime Queen Caramel. Next is Agent Ink. And next is Chef Aubergine. I do want to note as well, Chef Aubergine was at one point Dame Obsidian's private chef, so it is no surprise that she would be present at this holiday party. However, she did get fired at one point in time from Dame Obsidian because she ended up murdering someone, and Dame was not planning on her to murder anyone that time. So it is a little bit surprising that she is back here. Um, but not sur- It is a little bit surprising that she got hired back, but I'm not surprised that she's here in the first place because she was at one point in time Dame Obsidian's private chef. Um, and I would also like to say one of the locations is the ancient ruins. This is day 2, and the ancient ruins are being involved. And now, before I get into everything else, you know what? I will get into everything else, and then I'll have a section for the ancient ruins because that's what the ancient ruins deserve. You don't know the ancient ruins like I know the ancient ruins, and I will explain it to you so that we could both be in the madness together. Okay, so I'm gonna leave the ancient ruins aside for the second time as I go through the day. So it turns out that it was Crime Scene Caramel. What did I say? What did I say about Crime Scene Caramel? She's really irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. She's here and then she's not. Um, Crime Scene Caramel ended up killing someone or killing the butler with a Christmas goose. You heard me right. It is an actual goose and themed for Christmas. In the glass greenhouse. Now, a fun thing about this glass greenhouse, I don't think it's going to be relevant in this book, but I just wanted to add this little fun fact. The glass greenhouse is actually built on top of where Dame Obsidian ended up killing and burying her husband. Excuse me. I just wanted to put that in there so that you know how iconic Dame is. And everybody knows this and nobody does anything about it because who's going to stop her? She made a book about it. And it went platinum. It went triple platinum just so that you could see the mind of Dame. So yeah, it was Crime Scene Caramel that ended up doing the murder. But there's a couple of things that happen in day 2 or are a part of day 2 that I want to mention. So I can talk about it. But first, it was Crime Scene Caramel with a Christmas goose in the glass greenhouse. Logico crossed the second name off the list of suspects in the crime scene of stealing Santa. At this rate, he was perfectly on pace to eliminate 24 of the 25 suspects, allowing him to solve the case on Christmas Day. That is, if there was any crime to solve. But Dame Obsidian, who had enormous experience writing mystery stories, immediately understood the flaw in Logico's reasoning. Why, Logico? If you don't discover who kidnapped Santa before Christmas Day, then no one will receive their presents on Christmas morning. Dame Obsidian was right. Logico would have to pick up the pace if he wanted to save Christmas. That is, if Santa was real after all. If he wasn't real, then he just needed to get to the bottom of a good mystery. Either way, he was going to have to hurry. Now, again, audience, do you think, after everything that I've told you about Dame Obsidian, that she was just flippantly telling him this just cuz, or was trying to light a fire on his butt because she has her own deadlines that she would like to meet? I'll leave that thought there. So, there are two big things. One is the ancient ruins. Again, I will get to it. The second thing is Santa's sleigh. Santa's sleigh was a weapon, and the person that had Santa's sleigh was actually Chef Aubergine. And I think that that is very fun that Chef Aubergine had Santa's sleigh, mainly because the description says the spec script is a fully. This spec script is a truly awful adaptation of Dame Obsidian's manuscript. It adds a few twists and several explosions. Did you hear that right? Now, I don't think it's necessarily important that Chef Aubergine had it, because again, I do not think that Chef Aubergine is involved. But The fact that this weapon is there, it says that this is a script. Remember, Hack Blackston said that he was making a script. So the fact that this script was made based off of the manuscript that Dame used to murder that one person, to lure Logico to the Sleepy Village and to solve these mysteries is no coincidence. Also, the fact that it is in her house, yet Hack Blackston is not here. But you know who is here? You know who is? Here is Agent Ink and Chairman Chalk. So I would not be surprised so far if this is the order of operations. Name sent that manuscript or the copy of the Myrtle Mystery to Mrs. Claus. Mrs. Claus then is just like, bet, I got you, bestie. I'm going to hire General Coffee because I can't do it myself to kidnap Santa and to lure Logico into this mystery. Then once Logico is lured in, right, she decides to murder someone very inconsequential using said manuscript, knowing that this will be used as an overarching thing that she could use for his book. She successfully lures Logico to the Sleepy Village, then has this Christmas party, acting like nothing's wrong, acting like she didn't just murder someone, and knowing that Logico was on the way. All her plan. Then while she's there, Hack Blackson already left a manuscript or edited the manuscript to be a movie adaptation. Remember again, books come out before the movies in this world. So the fact that both Agent Ink and Chairman Chalk is there means that her manuscript is probably already approved and is being discussed and negotiated at this Christmas party. And Dame, already ahead of the game, is already working with Hack Blackson and Midnight the Third to make the movie Santa's Sleigh. But she thinks that it's trash. Probably threw it in the trash. Maybe Chef Aubergine just saw it and read it and was just like, yeah, this thing is trash, right? And is actively trying to work on that while Deductive Logico is working on the cases, because then it'll be added in her next movie or her next adaptation. Or she already planned what is happening and is waiting for Deductive Logico to actually fulfill everything that she's done, which is another thing she's done before. So I say that to say, I am sticking with Mrs. Claus. This is day 2, and I am sticking with. Oh, actually, no, I did change. I'm glad that I went back to it. I'm thinking with Mrs. Claus is involved, but at this point, I do think that maybe it was Agent Ink instead of Mrs. Claus, and I actually do go back and forth with whether it was Agent Ink or Mrs. I do go back and forth whether it was Agent Ink or Mrs. Claus, just because I am only believing it's Mrs. Claus because I think that there is a huge reveal there. However, it makes more sense that Agent Ink would be the one to do it, because Agent Ink would be the one to stand the most for it. And also, this is not the first time Agent Ink has done things for Dame Obsidian, because she is her editor, publisher slash agent, which was a hard gig to get, and she had to like eliminate a previous agent. We don't talk about her. But remember, the person that was chosen, or the person that hired General Coffee, does not have the constitution to actually kill. Agent Ink has a heart of gold, which is very, very true. She does have a heart of gold, but she will use that heart of gold to stab you. But she won't actually kill anyone. She has never killed anybody in the entire time of the books. Not a single time. Anytime that she's been a suspect or has been involved, she has gotten someone else to kill for her, or she has masterminded, sort of similar to Dame Obsidian, but she has never gotten her hands dirty. So it would make a lot more sense if it was Agent Ink, which is why I changed my guess this day to Agent Ink. However, I would like it to be known that does not negate me thinking that Mrs. Claus is involved and that there isn't a reveal there. I do think that there is a reveal. But at this point, with Agent Ink being there with Chairman Chalk, which is again her boss, I think my theory about what I said makes more sense. And also, Agent Ink is the one that hired, I think, this day. Just flipping through. Let me make sure I actually like go through here, so that way I say it right. Now, I know what you're thinking. Tiana, what is the Ancient Ruins, and why does it have you in a chokehold? What's the Ancient Ruins? I'll tell you what the Ancient Ruins is, y'all. The Ancient Ruins is basically something used as a way to... Y'all, I'm going to try to summarize Volume 1 in minutes when it took me days to get through it. So give me some time and patience and brevity. The Ancient Ruins is a location that was used quite often as a way to say that something supernatural was happening and that there was like an ancient secret going on, like there was a chalice or some level of treasure or gold anytime the Ancient Ruins would pop up. And the Ancient Ruins will pop up not in one location but in numerous locations. as Logico was solving his quest and doing his mysteries. And at one point in time, Inspector Rational ends up killing someone and getting lost in the ancient ruins to where Deductive Logico thought that Inspector Rational was dead and could not find him. And turns out he was very much so alive. The other person that he killed was very much so dead. But the ancient ruins was something that Dame Obsidian in Midnight set up to where Deductive Logico, well, they set up these ancient ruins at specific locations and then planned murders to happen there so that Deductive Logico can say there was a murder that happened there and have someone arrested for it, because there was an obscure law in this world where if a murder has happened at a location, that it can be sold off for cheap and be bought out. And this is because Dame Obsidian and Midnight the Third, remember, who has the Midnight Studios, which is basically like a Warner Bros. Studio, was buying up these locations because they knew that there was oil at these places. And so they purposefully planned these murders and had Logico solve these murders using these ancient ruins as a mystery, even though it wasn't a mystery, to one, make the murder realistic, two, hide up the fact that they were planning these murders so that they could buy up the oil that was there, and three, turns out those places were also historical landmarks to the Midnight Studios legacy. And Midnight the Third needed that so that way he could prove himself to basically gain the favor of his father before he died, because the grandfather died. And so Midnight the Second and Midnight the Third were battling it out to see who gets, or not Midnight the Third. Midnight the Third and his brother and or cousin was battling out to see who gets the inheritance. And in the end, Midnight the Third was the one that won. I believe he also murdered his cousin or whoever was related to him that was also in line to get the Warner Brothers studio inheritance. And so that is basically what the Ancient Ruins is. Now I know what you're thinking, Tiana, that actually doesn't sound as bad as what you think. But I need you to understand these ancient ruins were at one point a portal to the other world. At one point, Mr. Grayman was used to make it seem like it was an alien thing. New Aegis had a altar worshiping the ancient ruins that were created. And Dame is so good, right? Dame is so good at gaslighting people and making things seem like they were, that even though that these ancient ruins were built recently, she made an entire town, the New Aegis, to be exact, believed that these ancient ruins were there for thousands of years, even though she just made it a couple of months ago, and had them worshiping this altar when in reality it was just a landmarker so that they knew what place had oil and what place needed to have a murder. Now I know what you're thinking too. Tiana, what did Irrational have to do with this in the murder? Irrational tried to show Deductive Logico through that murder, and inevitably ended up getting killed, but he wasn't actually killed. Someone was trying to kill him to stop him from showing Deductive Logico that. But the Inspector Irrational tried to show Deductive Logico the truth about what was going on, and he knew that the only way to do that was for him to murder and basically get himself murdered to motivate Logico to continue on. Because at one point in time, Logico was just like, I'm rich. I got this new movie and book out now that I wasn't planning on. Remember, Dame and Agent Ink and Chairman Chalk were able to convince Logico to make a book based off of the murders that he solved up until that point, and it became super successful, even having Silverton the Legend play him in a movie. Um, and so he's like, yeah, I don't feel like I need to follow through. And so Inspector Irrational ended up doing that to basically push Logico into digging deeper and realizing the madness of Dame Obsidian and Midnight the Third. So, Tiana, what does this have to do with this? What do I think about what's happening with the ancient ruins? Just like I said, I think the ancient ruins are a nod to the fact that this is a mystery that both Midnight the Third and Dame Obsidian is in control of, and is using um Logico to basically get what they want. And I think what they want is a holiday book and movie special. And I think that Agent Ink is the one that hired General Coffee to do it, because she is Dame Obsidian's agent and she will do anything for her clients. Make sense? Cool. So yeah, those are my thoughts after day two. I do change my answer to Agent Ink, and I will talk about the next day. Okay, we are now on December 3rd. A merry killing at the club. So he tried to relax at the club that he loved, but instead he found only a corpse that had been clubbed. I love the little rhyme scheme, by the way, that's why I keep mentioning it. Deductive Logic Ho checked into the small English village's location, a local detective club. This is also a prominent club that he is a part of. He does not initially become a part of this until I think the end of volume one, if not in volume two. Basically, think of it as like CIA agents, but make it detective work. And he doesn't really like being a part of the detective club because he still doesn't consider himself a detective. He considers himself a deductive person. But yeah, it's like this um think of it as like an agency where they dispatch people. It becomes prevalent in some other places. So he's in the detective club and tried to relax in the corner and work on a book of chess puzzles. Sometimes it was only when he was deeply buried in a puzzle that occupied his entire mind that he would have the insight he needed to solve the case. But instead, he found that their annual Christmas party was also in full swing. Everyone was drinking mulled wine and playing Catch the Goose, which is a game that is a part of the appendix that I don't think is important to point out in this point. Unfortunately, all this leisure went out the window the moment one of the detectives was found dead. It was a very clear violation of their no murders policy, and so it resulted in all the detectives breaking another rule: no working during a party. So, one of the interesting things that I found from this, or that was said through this, right, is the people. So there is Chessboxer Blaze, Grandmaster Rose, Silverton the Legend, Dame Obsidian, and Truther Topaz. I am confused as to why these people are here. Mainly because I did not realize that they were part of the Detective Club Association. I know that Dame is. We do find out that Dame is a part of the Detective uh Club Association in a very funny way in Volume One, and I believe Volume Two. But what is Truther Topaz doing here? What is Silverton the Legend doing here? What is Grandmaster Rose and Chessboxer Blaze doing here? Um, I am not sure. I don't know if this is an actual reveal that they are part of the detective club or they were just there because it was a party and it's a sleepy English village. What I will say too is that they recently added a coffee shop at this detective place and Dame Obsidian is there, which means that Agent Ink probably was there and hired Agent or General Coffee to do that there. I know Agent Ink is a suspect here, but wherever Dame Obsidian goes, it's sort of like a known thing that if Dame Obsidian is there, Agent Ink probably was there with her at one point or can be there. Um, so we go through it and we have Chessmaster Rose as the uh killer, which again makes sense. I didn't really have chess master Rose as one of my suspects. It does not make sense that she would kill anybody, or that he would kill anybody. Well, what I will say too is that one of the weapons is a red herring, and you know who has the red herring? Truth or Topaz, and I think that this means that Truth or Topaz is a red herring, and the fact that he is not the killer or the person that hired General Coffee, but also what he's saying isn't the truth. And what he's been saying is basically like Santa Claus isn't real and it's a conspiracy that everyone's involved in. But I know the truth that Santa isn't real. I think that this also shows that Santa is real and has been kidnapped. And I think that Agent Ink has been the one to do it. And this day, I stuck with my guns and said that Agent Ink was still it because of this. And so the solution, like I said, it was Grandmaster Rose. And it says, well, if you must know, he had beaten me at Catch the Goose with the person that died. He had beaten me at Catch the Goose, which was fine. He had beaten me at chess, which was also fine. But now that he's beaten me at my attempt to murder him and get away with it, now I'm really upset, which is hilarious. Surely you don't need to Surely you don't need to kick me out of the club, do you? Can't you make a Christmas exception? The detective club debated this for some time at length before deciding that they could make a Christmas exception for someone committing murder, especially for someone who got caught, which is hilarious. Deductive Logico crossed Grandmaster Rose's name off his list and looked at the calendar. He still had plenty of time to solve Santa's disappearance, but the days were ticking away. Um, this murder was also done in a coffee shop. I think that's also a nod that the coffee shop is here. Um, but I don't really have anything else to say. At this point, I still do think that is Agent Ink. All right, now we're on December 4th. Scientology, the joyful science. If you truly examined the clues, it was clear Santa Claus was real as the body. If you truly examined the clues, it was clear Santa Claus was as real as the body in here. Personally, Logico didn't find the evidence for Santa's existence that convincing. He had explored a lot of seemingly real places that turned out to be sets or simulations or just good old fashioned cons. Being in a scientific laboratory with a few extra Santa clues was not enough to pursue him. A few bites out of a cookie, a fingerprint on a glass, Logico was going to need a little more than that to believe in a fairy tale. If Santa's not real, Scientific Evergreen said, who delivers all the presents? Logico wasn't in a mood for philosophical inquiries. He had a more pressing question. If this laboratory is legitimate, how come the assistant has been murdered? Now, the suspects are now at Scientific Evergreen's lab. These are the suspects. We have Captain Slate, we have Scientific Evergreen, we have Chef Aubergine, we have Agent Ink, and we have Chancellor Tuscany. That is a very interesting cast of characters to be at a scientific lab to study if Santa Claus is real or not. So, after everything, we see that it was Captain Slate with plaster hoof prints, and these are preserved plaster castings of reindeer hoof prints. Although, if they could fly, how would you get that? Anyways, it was Captain Slate with the plaster hoof prints in the computer room. Now, I'm going to read the solution just because we find out something very interesting. It says, of course I did it. They wouldn't accept my evidence that Santa was real. And mind you, this lab is about proving Santa's real, and Scientific Evergreen's whole point is proving that Santa's real. But Captain Slate says, of course I did it. They wouldn't accept my evidence that Santa was real. They said they're working to study him, and they're rejecting eyewitness testimony with incontrovertible proof. Wait, Logical said, you've seen Santa? This could be the break we need. For the last time, Scientific Evergreen told Captain Slate, you did not see Santa, and you did not have incontrovertible evidence. You have a blurry video that depicts, at best, a lens flare. A lens flare, or a flying sleigh that just looks like a lens flare. But Logico felt like that when even a Santologist doubts your evidence, it's probably fake, and he crossed Captain Slate off the list of possible Santa rappers. So then I thought to myself, Tiana, have I just been on the Dame Obsidian hype train enough to not really see anything else? And to that I say, I find it highly suspicious that Scientific Evergreen, whose whole purpose in this story and his whole purpose of his lab is to prove that Santa is real, using nibbled cookie and glass of milk. But for some strange reason, when Captain Slate comes to him with plaster hoof prints, he doesn't view that as real evidence. In a video, though blurry, as real evidence. And then I said to myself, what if it's actually Scientific Evergreen? What if Scientific Evergreen knows that Santa exists, right? And somebody got close to discovering that Santa exists, maybe Truth or Topaz. And so to prevent people from finding out that he exists, he kidnapped him to hide him so that way his research could keep going on. And or he could be the one that discovers that Santa exists. Because think about it this way, he's getting paid to research if Santa Claus exists. But if someone finds out that Santa Claus exists, then his research is done. He's not going to get paid. His lab and his whole existence is non existent. So what if he finds out that he is real, hides Santa, / kidnaps him, has Truth or Topaz there to like try to get people to believe they don't exist. So that way he can have that big reveal like, haha, Santa does exist and here's how. Or, right? Instead of that, he's like, I'm going to hide him and kill him so that way no one will know that Santa exists and I could keep bringing up like small arbitrary advice so that way I could keep getting paid. So at this point, I changed my answer from Agent Ink to Scientific Evergreen. I still think that other plot that I had with Dame Obsidian and the book thing is plausible, but at this point, I'm starting to look at Scientific Evergreen. All right, so I am at December 5th. A new problem at the North Pole. On the 5th of the month, he returned to the pole, where an elf had been killed and the trail had gone cold. Deductive Logico returned to the North Pole to investigate. Surely there was something he could learn about Santa, something that would shed some light on this mystery. But instead of solving a mystery, he was presented with another one. The head of Elf Security had been killed. Either these two crimes were connected, or the North Pole was a lot more dangerous place than Deductive Logico had imagined it to be. Regardless, when there was a murder, he had a mission. Figure out who killed the head of Elf Security, what weapon they used, and where it happened. So with this one, we have Mr. Tuxedo, Mrs. Claus, Ski Pro Sunflower, Arnold the Blue-Nosed Reindeer, and Assistant Elf Greenie. And this is happening at Santa's place. So we get a little bit more knowledge of what's going on. There's a spa that is created due to the reflection of the sun, which is really cool. There's a gift shop, there's Santa's workshop, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I don't think necessarily pertains to the mystery. Excuse me. I just wanted to add it because I think it's really great world building. So after everything, we find out that it was actually Ski Pro Sunflower that did the murder with a giant candy cane in Mrs. Claus's cottage. Now, I will read the solution before I go into my little rant. They were kicking me off these sweet North Pole slopes, man. What else was I supposed to do? Well, you could try getting off the slopes, Logico said. Nah, man, never. Ski for life, bro. Logico was able to cross Ski Pro Sunflower off the list of suspects, leaving only 20 remaining. Even though this would still make him one day late for saving Christmas, if Santa really was real, it was still a good pace, and Logico was proud of his work. But things were about to get a whole lot more mysterious. So, Ski Pro Sunflower, again, pretty non existent of a character. I wasn't really concerned about him, or I wasn't concerned about her. Want to make sure I say the pronouns right on purpose. Blah, 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 blah. I'm going to say them, but I think it's very interesting that Mrs. Claus is here and in her blurb in this time because each time there's a suspect, there may or may not be a different blurb. And so in her blurb, it says, in her husband's absence, she seems to be in charge of the entire operation and she runs it in her own unique style. Well, that's to say that where how Santa was running it wasn't right, but how she's running it as well. And also, it says here, Mrs. Claus's cottage. Yes, she has a separate cottage, but that's because she likes having her own space. Why would she need her own cottage? And also, why did the murder happen in her own cottage with Ski Pro Sunflower? I'm saying this to say I'm switching back to Mrs. Claus, and at this point, I really didn't know why. I had a gut feeling that something's still a little bit off about Mrs. Claus that I can't take off. Again, this is not to say that my other two theories that I have aren't sort of wrapping in my brain, but I just found it a little suspicious, a little weird. And I feel like the reason why I'm not really fully willing to commit to Mrs. Claus is because we were literally introduced to her in the intro. And I'm not saying that Myrtle hasn't done this before, but I would be really surprised if like the person that ended up doing it was the person in the very, very beginning. I don't know. But that was December 5th. So now we will go on December 6th, which is the intro to Act 2. Okay, so now we are on December 6th, which is Act 2, Sorta Nice. So each act has its own thing. Like I said, the first one was just the intro. This is Sorta Nice. So it says, now that Deductive Logico had gotten the hang of these mysteries, he notices that they started getting a little harder. Sure, they seem like they involved the same pieces as before, the same number of suspects, weapons, and locations, but they all included something a little different. Some of them involved codes, others involved ciphers. Others involved esoteric languages. Some acknowledged that all three of those things were really just different words for the same thing. Regardless, Logico was able to solve them all, and as he did, he started to wonder a little bit whether he was wrong about Santa after all. Maybe, if so many other people believed, there really was something to it. Or maybe, like Truth or Topaz said, everyone was in on it together. So that basically means the puzzles are going to get a little bit hard. But I did want to read that little blurb just because every 5 days is a new act and you get the new setting and different solvies. So, December 6th, War is Noel. He was lost and confused as the snow softly fell, but the kids at the school were at war till the bell. Deductive Logico always enjoyed visiting his alma mater, the Deductive College. Remember? This is where he first learned how to use the deduction grid, where he first met Inspector Rational, and where he solved his first murder. Yeah, we also find out uh, in the prequel that he actually did meet Inspector Rational before the events that happened in Volume 1. It's just that Deductive Logico did not remember. Um, but this time was special. He had been invited to give a lecture at to the logic department. He was excited to talk about logic and mysteries. Unfortunately, when he arrived, he found the campus was preoccupied with something other than the investigation of logic. Ever since it had snowed, the Deduction College campus had developed into a full fledged snowball war, and the battle lines were drawn very clearly across the campus. On the one side were the Chessers, on the other side, the Boxers. The battle lines were constantly being redrawn, but when the snow cleared, Logico discovered something truly terrible. The snowball fighting coach had been killed. It was up to Logico to discover who done it, with what, and where. So, the suspects this time isn't too crazy. Chancellor Tuscany, Grandmaster Rose, Chessboxer Blaze, Mr. Tuxedo, and Hack Blackston. Hack being here is a little bit eyebrow raising, but we find out that it was actually Chancellor Tuscany with a snowball grenade in a neutral zone. And then it says, fine, I thought this might actually put a stop to the snowball war, which has torn our campus in two. But just as she was saying that, another snowball hit the side of her face. It was followed by hundreds of snowballs from the other side. The terms of the truce had ended, and now the war was back on. The Chessers and the Boxers descended on each other. Logico fled the chaos of the war. He had been involved in too many international conflicts to think this one was worth trying to mediate. The Draconian War, y'all. After all, he had more important things to do here. He had to find Santa. Still, it was good to be able to cross Chancellor Tuscany off the list. Yeah, so like I said, Chancellor Tuscany has been. She will do anything to protect the school and make sure that everyone's good. And so this is not surprising to me. Again, I don't think that she was involved. Cute little thing. Apparently, the penguin has been involved into deduction college due to an error. He might not be qualified, but he's not qualified to be a murderer either, and that has not stopped him. I just thought that quote was a little cute. Um, Nothing too crazy to say. Again, I do think it's a little bit crazy Hack Blackston is here, and his blurb does mention Santa's sleigh, which again is the screenplay that he's making about Santa Claus being dead or something like that. And remember, that is also the manuscript. He used the Dame's manuscript to make said play, and it was in her home. So I'm not sure why he's at the school. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with just overarching. And like that little blurb said, everybody's in on it. So I do think that by everybody, I mean a good majority of everyone is in on it. And by that, I mean Hack Blaston, uh, Asian Ink, Dame Obsidian, Chairman Chalk, um, Silverton the Legend, and Mrs. Claus. So at this point, I am back to Mrs. Claus again because I'm still like, it's something about Mrs. Claus that's just giving me like, I feel like there's a real reveal there. I feel like that's going to be the surprise. All right, we are at December 7th. We are almost halfway through up until today. So December 7th, resorting to murder, to a mountain for skiing did Logico go, just to find a cold body half covered in snow. Deductive Logico visited the Snowville Mountains, where the ski resort was having the typical issues it had every ski season. For one, the influx of tourists had raised the prices for everything in town, making it hard for locals to live. And two, people kept being murdered. This time, the victim was the kindly old lift operator who had been with the resort for the last 20 years. It seems he had been mumbling something about blackmail and threats and Merry Christmas. Now, we have our suspects. We have Mr. Grayman. We have Midnight the Third. We have CEO Indigo. We have Ski Pro Sunflower. And we have Major Red. And after everything, we find out that it was actually CEO Indigo at the ski pole with the ski lift. And the blurb is that I'm far too rich to arrest, so I'll explain exactly why I did it. I wanted to. The lift operator has seen me bribe a lot of politicians on these ski lifts, and I know he'd suspect that I was responsible for a couple of the people I pushed to their deaths. I had to tie up loose ends somehow. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to leave. Logical told him he wasn't allowed to leave, but there were no members of the detective club nearby to do anything about it, and so CEO Indigo left. After all, if I'm not there to run my company, who's going to make all the presents for Christmas? He literally thinks he's Santa, Logico thought. But unfortunately, it couldn't have been him who kidnapped jolly old Saint Nick. Logico crossed him off the list. And I think that that was a very important point that was said. Who is going to make all the presents for Christmas? And when he said that, and CEO Indigo being the one eliminated, again, I don't think that CEO was a potential. Um, but it was just the way in which it was done and said. It made me feel like maybe I'm thinking about this all wrong, and it really is a matter of Santa does exist. Maybe Scientific Evergreen is working with CEO Indigo and Vice President Mauve. That would make their characters a little bit more important in my eyes, and I would like them a little bit more if that's the case. But maybe they're working with them, or maybe Scientific Evergreen is working with them to get rid of Santa so that way their company can be the present maker because Santa's not there, right? And then he could keep the secret that Santa exists so that he could keep his research going and get paid. Does that make sense? That's my thought. Uh so yeah, I did change my guess back to Scientific Evergreen. I am really waffling. I feel like it's between Mrs. Claus, Agent Inc., and Scientific Evergreen. I feel like it's between the three. All right, we are on December 8th. Under blankets of snow slept the woods dark and deep, and they dreamt of the night until awoken from sleep. Deductive Logico had to visit the Investigation Institute because he knew whenever there was a potentially supernatural mystery with endless loose threads, the only place you could trust to give you a straight answer was a place where none of the answers were straight. Logico, Inspector Rational said over the phone, his voice breaking. To be clear, this was because he was sad, but because Logico's signal was bad. He was in the middle of the forest around the Institute, you see, and there was a reason he was on the phone with the Rational. It was because he had lost his way on the lonely road to the Institute. It was because he found a dead body on the way, and the rules of mystery solving said you couldn't go along your way until you solved the mystery first. That's just the way it worked, and Logico went to work. So, our suspects are Vice President Mauve, Scientific Evergreen, Inspector Ratiano, Mr. Grayman, and Truther Topaz. And I would like to note the ancient ruins are here. So I feel like I'm back to believing, and I did change my guess again. I am back to believing that it is Mrs. Claus, and my theory that Agent Ink is involved and Dame Obsidian is involved in that whole theory. We do find out that Vice President Mauve was the one to do it with the Christmas tree. This also sort of eliminated my thought that it was maybe, excuse me. This also sort of eliminated my thought that maybe um, Scientific Evergreen was involved because I had my theory that he was working with Indigo and Evergreen, or Indigo and Mauve. But since both of them just got eliminated back to back, I'm losing a little bit more faith in my Scientific Evergreen theory. Um, so it says it was Vice President Mauve, and he was like, okay, fine. I electrocuted a guy to test a new method of murder, and it worked, clearly. But that's what business does it tests the theories that science brings to it. Logico said he had to be going because he didn't think he could call for help in the woods, and he didn't think Vice President Mauve would turn herself in willingly, especially considering her boss had just refused to do the same thing. But Logico did get a scratch out of her name on the list of suspect. He was one step closer figuring out who stole Santa, if Santa truly was stolen. So yeah, I am going back to Mrs. Claus in this, and back to my theory that Dame Obsidian sent the note to Mrs. Claus. She did it so that way the manuscript and the play can go on, if you will. Okay, we are now at December 9th. Investigation in the Institute. At the Institute's gates was a warning quite clear. It went, "Hey, I'm a body, so be careful, my dear." Logico looked up at the body of the guard hanging over the gates of the Investigation Institute. For many years, Inspector Rational had been the president of the Institute, and yet, in all those years, there were still people being murdered there. Why do you think that is? He asked Irrational. Isn't it obvious? Irrational replied. It's because this place is cursed. Logico didn't believe in curses, and he told Irrational as much. Well then, how come we are investigating a murder mystery when we're supposed to be getting ready for the annual Institute Winter Ball? So, these are our suspects: Ebenezer Rouge, Captain Slate, Chessboxer Blaze, Inspector Irrational, and Dame Obsidian. Why is Dame here? Why is she at the Inspector Institute? Like we need to start asking the questions here. I feel like I sometimes get tunnel vision, and is because of like my depth and knowledge of Dame Obsidian. Anytime I see her, I'm like, it's you. You are involved some way, shape, or form. Even when she's not. Even though the single few times she genuinely is not involved in anything and she is just there for a one-off, I'm like, no. What is your plan? Because the ancient ruins really took me in for a loop. It was a lot, okay? Um, but she's already crossed off the list. So it turns out Chessboxer Blaze was the one that did it, and we find out, or it says, that guard wasn't going to let me into the winter ball, Chessboxer Blaze explained, but then when I picked up that Christmas tree, he changed his mind. If he changed his mind, why did you kill him? Logico asks. To set an example, next time I'll get right in. And we don't know if Chessboxer Blaze got in or not, but I think that is very iconic behavior. I do not allow or accept or condone violence. However, I do condone it when it is fictional and does not affect anyone around you. So go off, Chessboxer Blaze, in this fictional world, in this fictional place. Um, but I do find it interesting that Dim is here, and at that point, I really was like, I think I'm having tunnel vision. I think I am so focused on Dame and Mrs. Claus that I'm going to switch back to Scientific Evergreen. I feel like if I was a new person that did not know any of the history, I would be leaning more towards Scientific Evergreen. But because I know the previous volumes, I feel like the mystery would make more sense for it to be Mrs. Claus. So at this point, I did change my answer back to Scientific Evergreen. Um, and again, I'm just going back and forth because, like, okay, on the one hand, I love my Scientific Evergreen theory. It makes a lot of sense to me, and it will be a cute overarching story Christmas thing, and then Scientific Evergreen inevitably helps everyone else. But on the other hand, I know Dame. That is my good Judy ma'am. That is my bestie. Okay, and I know that Dame will not let other people play her. But then I'm like, this is supposed to be a book where you just pick it up for the holidays and you have no idea about the other books, right? So I feel like it would make more sense that it would be Scientific Evergreen, but I still have my other plot and theory in the back of my head about Agent Ink and or Mrs. Claus being involved. But I officially changed my answer for day, what is this? 9? For day 9. I do officially change my answer to Scientific Evergreen. Okay, now we are on December 10th. Peace on Earth and cheap tickets as well. And so Logico went to a place that was swell, but he only found snow and a corpse in a well. They're rhyming on point, by the way. Like, good on them. The crystal loving community of New Aegis was getting ready for their annual Christmas spectacular, which meant decorating the whole city in festive decorations. But when they put Christmas lights down the town well, they beheld a terrible sight: the body of an esteemed astrologer. Now, in the esoteric and occult communities, finding a body in the town well is considered a pretty bad omen. For example, within the ancient system of the Marrow, murder themed tarot. Remember, tarot is technically copyrighted. The body in the well is one of the least auspicious cards you can draw. But even those who don't believe in the occult have to admit that finding a corpse in the drinking supply is never a good sign. So the members of the community got together and discussed what to do. And finally, they decided they would contact the only person they knew who could solve the case: Deductive Logico. Logico dropped what he was doing and immediately traveled to New Aegis. Partially, this was because he once lived in the town and therefore felt a strong attachment to it. Partially, it was to keep up his pace of solving one murder a day. But finally, it was because they offered to pay him an incredible amount of money. Got another water break. So the suspects are Truther Topaz, Mr. Grayman, Inspector Irrational, Chef Aubergine, and CEO Indigo. And at this point, I'm like, man, Inspector Irrational keeps coming up, but I truly do not think that Inspector Irrational did anything. Maybe it's just my thought process, right? So So those are the suspects. And again, like I said, I am starting to get a little bit suspicious of Inspector Rational, but not too much. It ends up being Mr. Grayman. Again, not like there are no surprise cross offs so far for me. Like I don't think there has been any major cross off where I'm like gasping because I'm like, yeah, that's to be expected. I'm not surprised. So yeah, Mr. Grayman was the one that did it. And he said, but before Logico could make the accusation against this tiny suspect, the tiny suspect was seen floating up into the sky. He wanted to be skeptical of his own eyes. Is it possible that he actually saw what he had seen? But more important than that, he wondered if there was some similarity in the technology that Mr. Grayman was using and the supposed magic that Santa used to travel around the world at night. These kinds of conundrums could keep him up at night, but hey, at least he could cross Mr. Grayman off the list. And so this sort of confirmed to me that I feel like I'm still on the right track with Scientific Evergreen because now we're getting into more sciencey things. Like what if the alien like what if Santa's an alien and works with Mr. Grayman and uses that technology to sort of deliver people's presents, right? And maybe Scientific Evergreen knows that and that's why he kidnapped him. I don't know. I'm sticking with the Scientific Evergreen still because I have a feeling about it. I just feel like that thought process of like Scientific Evergreen kidnapped him so that way no one discovers that Santa's real and he could keep researching and eventually he could reveal that Santa's real so that way he gets the glory of it. I feel like that's a good track. Even though I think my thought process of the book scheme with Dame Obsidian is pretty good. So I'm locking in for day 10 Scientific Evergreen. So now we are on day 11. We are now in Act 3, which means the puzzles are getting harder. And so, day or December 11th, on a Hollywood set, there was peace and some calm until boom, it was not just the movie that bombed. And see, now we're at the movies. We're at the. Okay. Midnight the Third invited Deductive Logico to Hollywood to visit the set of his latest movie. I'd love for you to come for three reasons. One, it would help publicity for the picture. Two, it would improve safety on set. And three, somebody was already killed and I need you to solve it. Do you see what I'm saying about that theory again about Dame has been working with Midnight Third and that this is a way to not only help the book but also help the movie and they're using deductive logico to promote and to make everything more real. Do you see that, guys? And I'm not even finished with the little blurb. But when Logico arrived, he discovered it wasn't the murder that most offended him. It was the movie. They were already making a film about Santa being kidnapped. Apparently, Midnight Studios had optioned Dame Obsidian's manuscript, purchased the rights to Hack Blackston's script, mostly for the title, then mashed them together with a rip from the headline storyline that made executives see dollars but everyone else confused. It was offensive not only because it was too soon, but also because it seemed awful. Most of the backgrounds were just big green walls, and even Santa's beard was going to be CGI because Silverton the Legend refused to grow it out. In fact, the movie looked like it was going to be so bad the actors were dying to get out of it. Well, at least one of them was. Unfortunately, it wasn't their career that blew up, it was a bomb. And so, before I finish saying what I'm going to say, I'm just letting you know day 11, I felt very vindicated. I felt like I am back on the case, and I think it's Mrs. Claus. Just with that blurb alone, because everything that I predicted before, and I want y'all to know what I told y'all in the very beginning was not me after day 11. That was me day one. That was my thought process day one before I even read a single day chapter. So I felt very vindicated in this. But then I'm like, we're not even at the end. This is like the halfway point, and you're proving my point. And usually in books and movies and media, when you're on the track of the show and it's not the end of the show, that means that they're going to give you a twist and really you're wrong. So I feel like I'm right at the very least for guessing this part before getting there. And so I am back to Mrs. Claus. I am abandoning Scientific Evergreen at this point. I do think it's Mrs. Claus. If not Mrs. Claus, I do think it's Mrs. Agent Inc., but I think it's Mrs. Claus. So anyway, the suspects are Crime Queen Caramel, Hack Blackston, Mrs. Claus, because she's back again, Silverton the Legend, and Midnight the Third. Now her blurb says, if this woman is Santa Claus's wife, then how come she is in Hollywood consulting on an action movie about his disappearance? Shouldn't she be looking for him or mourning? Again, makes me feel like it is Mrs. Claus. So we get through and we find out that it was Silverton the Legend that did it. And his favorite movie is It's an Okay Life, which is funny. So then it says, this is why I'm no good as the murderer in a whodunit. Anyone in the audience who knows anything about movies would know I wouldn't take the role unless I got to play the killer and give the big speech in the end. But you're not in the movie right now, Logico replied. In the movie, you're playing Santa Claus, not a murderer, and Santa's not a murderer. Oh, well, clearly you haven't read the latest draft of the script. And what do you even mean, Santa's not a murderer? You don't really believe in Santa Claus, do you? Logical wasn't sure what he believed, but he did know that if Santa Claus was real, he definitely wasn't a murderer, but Silverton was, so he crossed his name off the list. See, and now this is where I'm back to the Mrs. Claus thing, and then again, also the fact that she was a suspect was like, yeah, I'm onto something. Because why are you there and your husband's dead? I feel like she is involved with Dame Obsidian's scheme and Midnight the Third scheme. Dame sent her the script, right? Mrs. Claus decided to take action, and then everything from there on out was relying on deductive logico to go through it, so that way Dame's book slash movie would go great. And Agent Inc. was involved in it because she is Dame's agent and also works for Chairman Chalk, who put out a bet that Christmas novels are going to be a hit this year. So I say it all to say, I'm sticking with Mrs. Claus. And at this point, I realize, and you guys are getting a real time reaction. Today is still December 13th. Happy birthday again, T. But I did not do yesterday's, apparently. And I have not done today's. So you will get a real reaction of yesterday's today, and you'll also get a real reaction of today's today. So stay tuned for that. Y'all, I just solved day 12, December 12th, and I am shocked actually. So let's get into it. And y'all are gonna see me in real time think through this before I even read the solution as well. Okay. So December 12th, research and ye shall find. At the pole in the south was a deadly body too, but by this point our detective was used to a few. Inspector Irrational had offered Logico some unsolicited advice. If you want to find out who kidnapped Santa Claus, you should go to the place you least expect to find him, the exact opposite side of the world, the South Pole. Deductive Logico did not appreciate that advice at all, as nobody ever appreciates unsolicited advice. He told Irrational he did not intend to follow it. Approximately 2 minutes later, he received a telegram asking him to come quickly to the South Pole because there had been a murder at the Antarctic Research Facility. It has nothing to do with your advice, Logico said, unconvincingly. Now, I have been overlooking Irrational, mainly because I'm like, nah, I think that he is just here for the ride and to prove that Santa does exist, but he's not actually involved. But that happening so fast, and again, like I have said in the past, Irrational has murdered and have made very nonsensical schemes to prove to Logico that like the mystic world does exist or like fantastical things do exist. So this is something that he has done before. But the suspects are Truth or Topaz, Captain Slate, Ski Pro, Sunflower, Scientific Evergreen, and Mr. Tuxedo. Now, at this point, I was worried, right? Because I was just like, oh my goodness, I think Scientific Evergreen might be crossed out. And as much as it'll be great because then I could really funnel in on the Mrs. Claus thing, I feel like my theory about Scientific Evergreen will be disproved. But would you believe me? Moment of silence. Mr. Tuxedo was the one to murder someone, and I am a little bit sad because I did have like a third backup theory that maybe the penguin, Mr. Tuxedo, was doing this for the Christmas penguin thing and that he could be the head of like Christmas with his Christmas penguins. That was a very, very like far in the back reaches theory because I just think that he was just there for fun. And turns out he really was here for fun. But let's read together and have the shock together because I did not read the solution, even though I know I'm right, which I am. But I did not read the blurb, and that may change what my answer is and who I'm going to lock in. Squawk, he said. Logico didn't know if you could try a penguin for murder. I don't know either. But when he told Irrational what Mr. Tuxedo had said, Squawk, Irrational was shocked. They should throw the book at him. He's an unrepresented he's an unrepentant murderer. He promises to do it again. That is hilarious. Logico was unsure if Irrational was pulling his leg or if he truly believed he could speak penguin. Either way, he no longer wondered why penguins were so cute. Now he wondered how they were capable of such heinous acts. Regardless, he was able to check off another suspect from consideration in the crime stealing Santa. Now, I am very tempted to believe that Irrational did it, but I feel like for it to be day 12 and that to be tossed in, I would need a little bit more time for the irrational theory to cook, in my opinion. So I'm going to stick with Mrs. Claus. With this, I'm going to stick with Mrs. Claus only because I feel like that's the most solid answer for me. Though now I'm looking at you, Irrational. I'm a little suspicious of you now. Um, but in terms of this mystery, there's nothing that really stuck out to me. No motives that really stuck out to me. Um, that I would talk about. But again, I was just really scared because I really thought that Scientific Evergreen was going, y'all. And this is my real time reaction. I'm sticking with Mrs. Claus, but I now am trying to formulate a theory as to why Irrational would do it because Irrational has been a suspect and has gotten away with it. I don't know. Let's see what day 13 has in store. Y'all, I am shocked. I just finished the puzzle and I have just figured out that it was Assistant Elf Greenie. Again, I did not look at the solution, so you get my real time reaction if I'm right or not. I'm pretty sure I'm right in solving it, but okay. I let's It's December 13th, 0 days since the last workplace murder. In the workshop, our gumshoe did find a few clues, like the fact that an elf had been killed with his shoes. Logico returned to the workshop at the North Pole. Assistant Elf Greenie led him around, explaining all the production pipelines. Now, Greenie said, we're worried that this year all of this will be in vain. After all, if we haven't found Santa before then, who's going to deliver this incredible inventory? Logico looked at the giant pile of presents in front of him. They had everything you could imagine, from high-end electronics to one of those wooden toy trains. Maybe this is some kind of toy knockoff operation, Logico thought. That would explain why they're located in such an out-of-the-place way. But Logico was snapped out of this reverie when he noticed, on top of the pile, the body of one of the elves. Now, we later find out that the elf, or I predict, because it would make most sense that the elf on top of the pile is most likely the head elf, and the suspects are Scientific Evergreen, Assistant Elf Greenie, Crime Queen Caramel, Ebenezer Rouge, and Major Red. Now, why is Scientific Evergreen here at the workshop, at Santa's workshop, with the elves and everybody? It's like being able to be at the North Pole and Santa's workshop just easy access. Is anybody allowed to be there? I mean, at this point, I feel like it makes him that much more easily kidnappable if anybody could just be there. Because why is he there? And his blurb says a careful examination of the so-called Santa's workshop has led Evergreen to conclude that if Santa Claus isn't real, then these people are sure wasting a lot of money pretending he is. Why are you here? And if you're so easily able to be here, how are you not able to prove Santa's existence? And why wouldn't you take the plaster reindeer hooves? It's leading me to go back into my theory about Scientific Evergreen. But I think I am going to stick with Mrs. Claus and my theory there because I do think that this is in a little bit of a way a red herring. I was very much so shocked that it was Elfie because we also get to see people's place on the list. And the person that was incredibly naughty was the one that did it. And it was a shock to me that it was Assistant Alfie because I didn't think that he would do it, but it makes sense that he would. But note that Scientific Evergreen is here, and he had the list. And Scientific Evergreen was seen as incredibly nice. That means to me that he could not have kidnapped Santa if the list is made based off of your personality and who you are, because Elfie was seen as incredibly naughty and killed someone, right? Versus Evergreen, he's incredibly nice. So if he kidnapped Santa, he wouldn't be on the nice list, right? Unless he helped Santa or saved him from another danger. But I don't even think that's possible. So I'm sticking with my Mrs. Claus theory, and I am letting go my Scientific Evergreen theory because he was found as incredibly nice here. Um, so yeah, I'm sticking. I am sticking with Mrs. Claus as my guess. Now let's read the selection together. Of course, it was Assistant Elf Greenie. I knew it. But he was underperforming, Assistant Elf Greenie declared. Ooh, this is my real time reaction, y'all. I did not read this ahead of time. He was taking breaks and goofing off and generally setting a bad example. Not this being Amazon. Ooh, am I going to get sued for that? Amazon, you're great and beautiful, and I have Amazon Prime. Okay, good. I think that saved me. This is basically like Amazon, right? I tried talking to him, explaining the importance of our job, but he wouldn't have it. He kept saying, "Who cares about Christmas?" So I did him in. That's real crazy. But Mrs. Claus took Assistant Elf Greenie aside and told him that this was not how the North Pole operated. They couldn't have murderous elves running around, and so she was going to have to let him go. This was pretty devastating to Greenie since there weren't a lot of non North Pole jobs for elves. Logico, unsure if he was watching a real workplace dispute or a pantomime designed to convince him that Santa Claus was real, nevertheless crossed Assistant Elf Greenie off his list of possible Santa stealers. Mrs. Claus coming in at that last minute. Again, you're getting my real time reaction to reading the solution here. I feel like I'm on the right track. Even if I'm on the wrong track of like why, I still am sticking with Mrs. Claus. I there's something suspicious about her. I don't trust her. I do think that there's going to be a surprise reveal, and I do think that Dame Obsidian has been masterminding all of this, whether it was intentional or not. But I'm sticking as December 13th last time. Happy birthday, sis. Um I'm sticking with assistant no, I'm sticking with Mrs. Claus. And at this point, as of December 13th, I am crossing off Scientific Evergreen as a suspect. Because if he was incredibly nice and this is being used to figure out who did what, I think that that shows that he's not involved in this at all. And I guess he just genuinely is skeptical as well. Maybe him and Truth or Topaz are both skeptical, and that doesn't mean that they kidnap Santa, but they're just the way they are. But yeah, I'm sticking with Mrs. Claus. And with that, that is the end of today. Thank you for being on this journey with me so far, and I will see you day 14 and onward. I don't know when I'm going to record next, but see you then. Okay, hello. Different scenery, different Tiana, same person. I am currently in the present time of December 19th, 2025. And so I have done today's Myrtle already. And so I think last time I left off, I was on December 13th on my lovely sister's birthday. And so I have a lot of catching up to do, and there's a lot that happened. So let's just jump right into it. We're on day 14. One animal was harmed in the making of this meal, is what it's titled. And then it says, at the finest of restaurants, our gumshoes did dine, but a murder disrupted their dinner time. And it says, Inspector Rational convinced Deductive Logico that they couldn't work constantly until Christmas. They needed to take some time off. And plus, he had reservations at a restaurant that were incredibly hard to get. Chef Aubergine's newly opened vegan fine dining eatery. Logico didn't want to lose his murder solving pace and ruin Christmas, but he admitted to Irrational that he had to eat. And so he reluctantly agreed that if he had to stop investigating to have a meal, it might as well be the greatest culinary experience money can buy. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, Logico got to have it both ways. A murder interrupted their third course. So, the suspects this time was Silverton the Legend, Chef Aubergine, Dame Obsidian, Agent Ink, and Vice President Mauve. Now, I know what you're thinking, Tiana. We've already crossed out Dame Obsidian. Excuse me. So why does she keep appearing? And to that I say, remember that little monologue that I said about Dame? I know that she has something to do with this. I just am not sure anymore. And I will get to that in a hot moment. But it ended up being for the 14th and ended up being Chef Aubergine. I sort of knew it was going to be Chef Aubergine because she usually tends to murder at her restaurants or wherever she's cooking. A little bit surprised that she wasn't the murderer for at Dame Obsidian's mansion when she was there, but I don't think that they specified she was cooking there. I think she might have just been an invitee. I don't know. But it was Chef Aubergine with spoiled milk in the dining hall. And honestly, aside from the suspects being where they're at, the what am I trying to say? The locations and the weapons weren't really yelling at me. I did find it interesting that we had a Christmas goose yet again, but I do think that it's just a fun little nod. I don't think it's anything too seriously. However, again, why Silverton the Legend, Dame Obsidian, and Agent Ink? I'm ignoring Vice President Mauve because we'll get to that in a little bit later too. But really, Vice President, I said it at the beginning, Vice President Mauve really doesn't give what it's supposed to be giving. Um, so I tend to ignore Vice President Mauve, and honestly, you should probably do the same. I would be highly surprised. I think the biggest gift and gap would be if Vice President Mauve actually had something to do with this overarching story. Because as I'm going through my Rolodex of Myrtles, Vice President Mauve has yet to really be a focal point in the overarching story, and more like a side character that just keeps being brought up. Not all the characters are going to be winners, okay? And so I find it really interesting on day 14 that Dame Obsidian, Agent Ink, and Silverton Legend are at this restaurant. What are they doing? What are they discussing? I still think it has something to do with that movie idea. And, you know, Dame and Agent Ink are still working on the book series and the movie manuscript and everything like that. And maybe Silverton is really like causing a problem because also Silverton did murder someone as well. Let me triple check that. I'm pretty sure he was the one that did the murder at the studio, and I wasn't really surprised because he has murdered before in his roles. So I do think it's a little suspicious, a little bit weird that Dame Silverton and Agent Ink is at this restaurant. But I am sticking with my Mrs. Claus theory, and I do think that that ties into that. And so, day 14, I felt pretty confident that I'm on the right track about it being Mrs. Claus, especially since up until this point now, she hasn't really been mentioned. But yeah, so that was my day 14 thought and guess. I have still locked in Mrs. Claus. I am very highly strong on that. Mrs. Claus was recruited by Dame Obsidian and Agent Ink to help make this book to Lore Logico and to doing Myrtles that would be inevitably used for their real murder mystery or their real documentary series and involved all these other people, and it was a group of people. But Mrs. Claus was ultimately the one to tell General Coffee to do what he has done. Okay. I didn't read the after solution, by the way. So after we find out it's Chef Aubergine, it says, outrageous. I would never kill one of my guests. Such a liar, Chef Aubergine is. She has killed numerous guests throughout the Myrtle series. Logico raised one of his massive eyebrows. So you expect us to believe that you serve spoiled milk accidentally. And then Chef Aubergine got as red as a tomato before she admitted, fine, I did it. Merry Christmas. And Logico crossed off another name off his list. Now, I do find it interesting because usually Chef Aubergine really relishes in her murders, but for this time she's like, no, it wasn't me. Which makes me feel like it really was Dame Obsidian that did it. Because again, why is Miss Ma'ams here? And this is very reminiscent to the first book where we say that someone did it and then find out later they actually didn't do it and they were framed and it was Dame Obsidian that framed them. I don't know what framing Chef Aubergine has to do with the grand scheme of things. But we will leave it there. And that is day 14. Okay, we are now on day 15. A lot of trees. Logico went to the Christmas tree lot. He had hoped everyone would survive. I guess not. Deductive Logico had a meticulous system for determining which tree to purchase for Christmas. He broke it down into 25 different variables that each contributed to the OTQ, the overall tree quality. Meanwhile, Inspector Rashno chose trees based purely on vibes. Normally, they would have had an amusing disagreement about these two methods as they struggled to agree on a single tree, but today they had something else to distract them, the body of another customer. Okay, so the suspects for this day is Arnold the Blue-Nosed Reindeer, Vice President Mauve, Chef Aubergine, Ebenezer Rouge, and Chairman Chalk. So I sort of knew with this lineup and list that it was either Ebenezer Rouge or Arnold the Blue-Nosed Reindeer going to get crossed off, and that assumption was pretty close because it was Ebenezer Rouge. Now, honestly, at this point, I don't think Ebenezer or Reindeer is involved in this. However, I do find it interesting that the Blue-Nosed Reindeer has been around for a while and still hasn't been eliminated as a murderer. But this day wasn't anything too crazy or spectacular. It was Ebenezer Rouge with the bag of fake snow in a scrawny tree. Um, and like I said, there was nothing crazy about the weapons or the locations that had me really raising an eyebrow. And again, Chairman Chalk being here, I don't find it suspicious that he's shopping for trees. Um, but I also still think that it's in the whole ring of Chairman Chalk, Agent Ink, Dame Obsidian, and then they roped in Midnight the Third and Hack Blackston to have this movie idea, and so they needed an outside person to handle this, which was Mrs. Claus, right? Because you're married to Santa Claus, and so she ended up doing it. But I still think that the plot twist is that Mrs. Claus is someone that we don't expect at this point. And so the solution says, fine, I'll admit that I did it, but I had a good reason. He tried to buy the tree I wanted. And then Logico said, that's not a good reason. Well, the next cheapest tree is going to cost twice as much, so it sounds like a good reason to me. I did it to save money, and I'll do it again. So, just your general Ebenezer Scrooge character. Um, and so I'm still locking in my Mrs. Claus. Nothing about this day has made me change my mind. And on to the next day. Okay, so now we are on day 16. And then December 16th, 16th day of December, this is where things get a little bit more spicy. So I'm going to go into this. It is called Courting Danger. Is he real? Was the question the court would decide. But when standing to the answer, the four but when standing to answer, the foreperson died. Deductive Logico was suddenly called to the trial of the century, not on whether or not Santa Claus existed, giving very much so Grandma got run over by a reindeer, which would not really be a claim that a court could adjudicate, but whether Santa Claus was guilty of intellectual property theft. The case had concerned a tricky issue of copyright law, one of the most complicated of the esoteric arts. Santa Claus had been given out elf manufactured versions of the most popular books in consumer electronics in a consortium of publishers and manufacturers, led by veteran publisher Chairman Chalk, had gotten together to sue him for his crimes. The jury debated for 4 hours, but just as the jury foreperson stood up to give the verdict, she was killed. Unless Logico could solve this crime, the case was going to be declared a mistrial, and the injunction against the North Pole would stand, which is pretty big. And so this led me to be like, ooh, okay, maybe I'm still right about the Mrs. Claus thing, but maybe it's not about the book. Maybe it's about shutting down the factory. So that way Chairman Chalk could make money off of it, and then Dame would still make a book about it and other people benefit. But really, this is about Chairman Chalk, right? See, that's what I was thinking at first. The suspects are Silverton the Legend, Chairman Chalk, Vice President Mauve, Mrs. Claus, and Dame Obsidian. So at this point, I'm like, why is Mrs. Claus there? And in her blurb, it says she's not here to defend her husband because, according to her, there's no court in the world with jurisdiction over the North Pole. Unfortunately, this is not a winning argument in court. Now, this is a very interesting cast of suspects given the setting that we're in. We are currently in court where Chairman Chalk and his goons are trying to sue Santa Claus, who's not present and would not be able to defend himself, for copyright stuff and making basically knockoffs of all the real toys that are out there for Christmas. And so I find it interesting that Mrs. Claus is not sitting with Chairman Chalk in this. So I feel like my Mrs. Claus theory may be wrong. And I don't really like admitting that because I really thought that was a very solid plot line. And honestly, it should have been the plot for the book. But that just might be me being me. I do think, though, I'm not wrong about it being Mrs. Claus. I think I'm wrong about the reason, and I'll get to it in a minute. So we ended up finding out, and the way that the puzzles are done this time is like there's statements that each suspect gives, and one of them is lying, and whoever's lying is the one that did it. And I'm not usually the best when it gets to this section, but I crushed it this one. I don't know. I just really locked in December 16th. And it turns out it was Chairman Chalk, which means we now get to cross off Chairman Chalk. Now, again, I'm not surprised that Chairman Chalk is murderer. He is murdered before. Agent Ink is still an option, which to me means that it may be Agent Ink if I still think that theory of we did all of this to make a book and lure Logico into solving murders that we manufactured a la Dame Obsidian. But I am now shifting my reason on my guess. I still think it's Mrs. Claus. But I think it's Mrs. Claus not working with Dame Obsidian and the rest. Maybe they benefited based off of what Mrs. Claus was doing, and that's a side story. But I think that something's really suspicious about Mrs. Claus. I think that maybe Mrs. Claus is somebody else, because I still think that's going to be a reveal. But maybe there's another reason and purpose. And I'm not sure about that yet, December 16th, but I'm still locking in Mrs. Claus, especially since she was a potential, and it would have been very shocking if Mrs. Claus. It would have been very shocking if Mrs. Claus was the one that I eliminated. But right now she's still standing, so I feel like I have good reason to keep her. And so that is my thought for December 16th. All right, now we're in December 17th, Christmas in Draconia. When I tell you that whenever I hear Draconia when it comes to the Myrtles, I immediately just flashback like PTSD. Like y'all don't listen. As much as I love Myrtle, house down boots. GT Carver, me and him are buddies. But like, y'all really don't understand the mental gymnastics of of volume 2 of Myrtle. Like, I don't want to say I don't do it because it was actually very fun and had some really great twists and turns and introduced some really, really fun characters that you don't see in the other volumes because they're specific for the story. But it was just a lot to keep up with. And, you know, war is always messy, but the way in which it was a back and forth and the way that the story was told, it was just really hard to keep up. So I would not, out of all the ones that, all, out of all the Myrtles that I have done, which is basically all of them at this point, I would say that volume 2 of Myrtle is probably the hardest to keep track story wise. I don't think it's the hardest Myrtles. I do think it's the hardest story wise to keep up with, in my humble opinion. So if you're someone that really loves a good story and wants to follow along and have a grand old mystery, volume 2 might be the last one that you want to do. Anyways, has nothing to do with day 17. Just want to put that out there so that you guys truly and fully understand why. And I know I had a rant earlier about it, but just the Draconic War, even Major Red just gives my eye a little twitch because Major Red was also a very focal character in the story without me spoiling much of what happens in the Draconian War. Um, so anyway, ever since the first day the Reds seized the states, they had tried to ban Christmas but had lost that debate. In the halls of the councils where Major Red supporters debated policy. By the way, I'm just gonna leave it alone. Uh, in the halls of the councils where Major Red supporters debated policy, they had always tried to do away with the bourgeoisie celebration of Christmas. Now they are partially against Christmas because the state-sponsored churches in Old Draconia taught that Santa Claus gave better Christmas presents to richer kids. Major Red's people knew that this was not true. In fact, rich parents simply lied to their kids and told them that Santa had purchased the presents they had bought because Santa didn't actually visit the rich kids since they were all on the naughty list. Unfortunately, while they were debating this question, one of the top Santologists in the country was killed, and it was up to Logico to solve the case. And so the suspects this time are Arnold the Blue-Nosed Reindeer, CEO Indigo, Crime Queen Caramel, Major Red, and Truther Topaz. And I saw Truther Topaz here, and I got a little bit excited because I thought we could finally cross him off the list because honestly, ever since that red herring thing, I really have been ignoring Truther Topaz. But he's still around. He is not the one eliminated. It's actually Major Red that is the person who did it. And so it says the people wanted a seasonal father figure dressed in red with impressive facial hair who would redistribute riches to all the people of Draconia. I am that person. If a Santologist wants to disagree with that, then let them. But you can't disagree with me in the country you can't disagree with me in my country and live. And so that sort of leads, I really, okay, I have to face it so that you guys can understand why I really knew that Major Red was non-starter. Major Red is basically, he's basically the dictator but non-dictator of Draconia at this point, and he basically is the dictator. However, he tries to make it seem like it's a democratic republic. There was a whole like the rich versus the poor thing. It was a whole thing. You just had to be there. You just had to read volume 2 and go through the mess in itself. And so this made sense that it was Major Red. I'm not surprised that this was Major Red. So far, the murderers have never. So far, I'm not shocked by the murderers and why they murder based off of their character traits and arc. I'm just glad that I get to cross them off. I was really, really hoping that I could cross off Truth or Topaz though, because he's just been crazy. However, at this point, it is because I need to mention the weapons in this one. Day 17, we have the Christmas penguin, and the Christmas penguin has been popping up a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot, in places where I'm like, okay, this is starting to feel like this is a buildup on something. So day 17, I was just like, okay, hold on, maybe it's Mrs. Claus, but maybe Mrs. Claus is the one that actually created the Christmas penguin, since we know that it's not Mr. Tuxedo handling this, right? And so what if Mrs. Claus was the creator of the Christmas penguin so that she could take over Christmas, and by doing so inevitably opened the floodgates for other people to take advantage of Santa Claus to be gone, but didn't want to kill him because she loves him, or just again didn't have the constitution to do it, so General Coffee took care of it. Now, why would she want the Christmas penguins if she's already Santa Claus, like Mrs. Claus? It sounds like she's very happy that he's gone. It sounds like she's running the shops better. It sounds like people like her better. And also just the fact that the Christmas penguins have been popping up. I feel like she is going to be revealed to be the person that made the Christmas penguins and want to take over Christmas, and is actually not Mrs. Claus. And maybe Mrs. Claus got kidnapped too. We don't know. But I'm still sticking with Mrs. Claus on this day. I just think the reason has to do with something with the Christmas penguins. I think maybe she made the Christmas penguins, or are trying to use the Christmas penguins to take over Christmas. Maybe Mrs. Claus is another holiday. Like maybe Mrs. Claus is really like the Easter Bunny or something like that, and is trying to use this as a way to cause chaos and destruction of the Christmas spirit so that we celebrate another thing more. Maybe it's a Thanksgiving turkey. I don't know, because people always skim over Thanksgiving for various different valid reasons. Um, so maybe it's like a Thanksgiving turkey wanting to get rid of Christmas because they're jealous that nobody celebrates Thanksgiving the way that they do Christmas. Yeah. Okay, and now we're on December 18th. The Winter Games. At the games, all the suspects were saying, not I, it was somebody else who had killed that poor guy. The Winter Games was a great opportunity for athletes from all around the world to compete against each other in non murderous competition. The thinking was that if there was a way to settle their differences with sport, there'd be less of a need to settle their differences with murder. That was the thinking, at least. The reality was that the games only served to provide more motives, means, and opportunities to murder. In this particular situation, it was the body of one of the referees. But of course, if it hadn't been him, it probably would have been the other contestant who was killed. And so the suspects are Grandmaster Rose, Chess Boxer Blaze, Ski Pro Sunflower, Inspector Irrational, and Mr. Tuxedo. Now, at this point, I was like, okay, maybe that this is being used to cross off Inspector Irrational, because a lot of these people we've already sort of crossed off, right? So I think it was either the non-murderers at this point was Inspector Irrational and Chessboxer Blaze. No, Chessboxer. So at this point, I thought we were crossing off Inspector Irrational, because I knew that most of everyone else was a murderer except for maybe Chessboxer Blaze. But then, plot twist, will you believe me if I say it was actually Ski Pro Sunflower? And we already know that day one we crossed off Ski Pro Sunflower. So I'm like, okay, pre-K pause, I thought that there would be a new murderer each day. And so Logico sort of said the same thing. I actually got this puzzle wrong because I was truly just shook, and I was like, no, it has to be Inspector Irrational. What's going on? So it was Ski Pro Sunflower this day. And again, remember, we have already crossed him off. And so It says, I don't think I'm going to have to. I don't. Ski Pro Sunflower saying, I don't think I'm going to really have to make much of an argument here. I wasn't supposed to participate in the ice fishing championship, but I was skiing past and the referee told me to get out. Well, you know what happens when someone tells me that. Logico remembered December 1st very well, and despite the cold, he had started to sweat. Ski Pro Sunflower was another double murder, which meant he couldn't cross off another suspect, which meant he slipped even further behind. Now at this point, I'm like, okay, okay, maybe I'm really onto something with the Mrs. Claus theory because Agent Ink wasn't brought up. We still have Agent Ink, a key player. Inspector Rational is still around, which is a little bit surprising because that could mean that Inspector Rational did all of this to prove that Santa Claus was real, or to maybe it was like Inspector Rational's gift to Logico, so he had something to do as an advocate because he knows how much he loves to solve murders, and Logico would do, and Inspector Rational would do something like that for his partner, Logico. I really don't know if they're married or not. So a part of me wants to say husband because I think that they're low key goals in the book, but partner. Uh, so that was very shocking, and I don't know what to do with this information. December 18th was really stressful. Like I was sitting here like I'm sticking with Mrs. Claus. I'm waffling with the reason, but I still feel like in my gut I'm right. And if I have been right since day one about this, even if I didn't get the exact reason right, wouldn't that be iconic? Wouldn't that be fierce? Wouldn't that mean that I am like the best detection person ever? Even though I have no idea what's going on and why we had a repeat. So, yeah, I am sticking with Mrs. Claus. Okay, and now we are on today, the present day, December 19th. That is when I am recording this. And it says, mind your own business. In the mind of the elves was a body as well. And if somebody knew, then they needed to tell. Deductive Logico had gone to investigate an elf mine where the so called Santa's workshop obtained most of the resources they needed to fuel their incredible Christmas manufacturing operation. Or at least that's what it appeared to be. Logico was a little surprised to see Assistant Elf Greeny there. He had been demoted to minor Elf Greeny, which was not only a lower rank but also a harder job. Not only did he have to really work to mine that Christmas magic, aka lithium, but he also had to watch out for murders. The head of the factory had been killed. Now, the suspects this time are Vice President Mauve, Minor Elf Greeny, Chessboxer Blaze, Chef Aubergine, and Major Red. Did that sound like all murders that we already crossed off the list? Because to me, that's what it sounded like, and that's exactly what it was. Aside from technically Minor Elf Greeny is a new character, even though they're not. But they've already murdered before, so I'm like, this is not helpful. Okay, I feel like at this point I'm spot on. I feel like I'm back on my theory that this was all Dame Obsidian, and well, it was Agent Ink's idea, and Dame Obsidian and Chairman Chalk and everybody else went along with it. Agent Ink was the one that decided, or Dame Obsidian was the one to send the manuscript to Mrs. Claus, so that way it kickstarted everything. Mrs. Claus ended up hiring General Coffee because Mrs. Claus couldn't bear to kill or kidnap her own husband, but really wanted that bag in gold because she feels like she has not been, appreciated or the forefront of Christmas. Got him off, and then who knows, maybe she did it too so the Christmas penguin thing could go off so that way she could be the head, and it just ends up tying together. Because my main suspects, aside from Inspector Resho, but my main suspects, which is Agent Ink, who I said does not murder, is still in the game. Mrs. Claus is still in the game. Christmas Penguin still is mentioned. I think in this day it is mentioned. Today it was mentioned. The Christmas Penguin is a weapon. Again, it wasn't used, but still. So I feel very confident in December 19th that my convoluted Mrs. Claus theory that Dame Obsidian and or Agent Ink sent the manuscript over to Mrs. Claus and that it was all her all along. However, I do think that there will be a crazy reveal that maybe Mrs. Claus is another penguin or something like that. I don't know. But I am on the right track because why are you refusing for me to eliminate other characters, right? So, with that being said, the leftover suspects on day 19, right, is Arnold the Blue-Nosed Reindeer, which I highly doubt it would be. There is no build-up or lead-up to make me believe it's Arnold. I would be very disappointed if I don't have a really, really good reason as to why. There's Hack Blackston, again, a part of the Dame Obsidian crew. There's Mrs. Claus, We all know my thoughts on that. There's scientific evergreen. I do think in my back pocket that scientific evergreen theory would go crazy, but I feel like everybody else has been eliminated to the point where I don't see it. There is Agent Inc. Like I said, there's Inspector Irrational. I do have my thoughts and theories on that. There's Midnight the Third. Um, and there is Truth or Topaz, which had the red herring thing, so I really don't think it's him. So, with that being said, that is the end of my day 19th and recording for today. I don't know when I will jump cut and or be in the future to tell y'all, but I am still on track to hopefully have this uploaded on Christmas, maybe Christmas night, if not December 26th, as a way to celebrate and give everybody a day and give myself a day. Uh, but yeah, I feel very strong about the Mrs. Claus thing. Yeah. All right, hello. The day is currently December 21st, 2025, and I have realized, hey, if I want to actually upload this by Christmas or the day after Christmas, I'm going to have to go ahead and not do it day by day. So, today, hopefully, will be my final edit slash what am I going to do or who is the murderer of this myrtle, and you will get the conclusion. But this will be uploaded either Christmas Day or Christmas night or the day after Christmas if editor Tiana, actually has the time to do it. So, where we left off was December 19th, Tiana, I'm pretty sure. And so now we are on December 20th. December 20th was a very good day because I was already pretty upset that we had the double duplicates. And now we actually do have a new murderer. But let's get into it. December 20th. The murder rate is stable. But the reindeer were peaceful, asleep in their stalls, until Logico came and awoke them with calls. Over the phone, Irrational made a great point. A good way to prove that Santa was real would be to check if the reindeer could fly. Surely, a fake North Pole village wouldn't be capable of having reindeer that could fly. But when Logico arrived at the reindeer stables, after another very expensive flight to the North Pole, nobody could answer the question. So you admit that you have no idea how the flying reindeer work? Yes, Mrs. Claus uh, said, I'm saying that only Santa knew how they worked. Oh, Logical replied. But while you're here, do you think you could solve a quick murder for us? Now, this is very suspicious. Why doesn't Mrs. Claus know? You've been with the reindeer this entire time and you never questioned about the reindeer. I am still locking in that I think that there is a crazy reveal that Mrs. Claus isn't who she says she is, it's someone else. But the reason on why I think it's her is going to change, and I'll get to that when I get to it. So the suspects are Ski Pro Sunflower, Captain Slate, Major Red, Arnold the Blue-Nosed Reindeer, and Mrs. Claus. So at this point, I'm like, if it turns out to be Mrs. Claus and I was wrong, I'm gonna be upset because I've been locking in Mrs. Claus for like basically 3 weeks now. If you go back into my video, and so if it is finally Mrs. Claus's time to be eliminated, I'm gonna flip my lid. But luckily, fear not, it was actually Arnold the Blue-Nosed Reindeer, which means we get to cross off a new person off the list, but we are still technically two characters behind, which I think will end up being a plot twist later down the road. Basically, it says that it was Arnold the Blue-Nosed Reindeer with a hoof on the rooftop. There's nothing about the locations and the weapons that were eye-raising to me, but again, I was just so worried about it being Mrs. Claus that I was just happy it was a blue-nosed reindeer. So it says, bark, bark, bark. Arnold spat in his characteristically bitter tone. Logico wrote that down gravely and then turned to his list of suspects and crossed one off. Arnold the Blue-Nosed Reindeer wouldn't be driving Santa anywhere this year because he was a murderer. And murderous reindeers are not allowed to be a part of the team, he would assume, unless they were in a really dire straits. But when Logico was going home, he heard something on the radio that changed everything. It was Truth or Topaz ranting on his late night radio show about the new movie coming out from Midnight Studios. This is obvious pro Santa propaganda. They've come up with a ridiculous device. 5 relics that explain how Santa does the impossible. Do I sound like that? Logico thought. Not for the first time. He changed the station, but someone was mad about Santa's sleigh on the next station too. This is anti-Christmas propaganda. How dare you put Santa, whom children love, in a horror movie? It seemed nobody liked this new movie, but everyone cared about Santa Claus, so the stakes couldn't be higher. And this is where my thought of like, okay, Mrs. Claus was the one that did it, but maybe she's working, maybe she's working with Midnight Like I said, the whole big sphere, right? Agent Ink is still in, Midnight the Third is still in. So many big players in my theory that it was Dame that sent the note to Mrs. Claus and started this whole thing so that the movie could really be a blast, box office hit, and everyone could profit off of it. I'm still sticking with that at the end of day 20. Uh, so I will leave my thoughts there. Okay, and now we're on December 21st, which was today's. So I did today's, and then I was like, yeah, I should probably do the next ones. I believe I stopped at the 23rd. So the next reactions will be my genuine shock and surprise. But just know I know everything that happened up until the 23rd. Let me just see and triple check. Da 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 da. Yeah, up until the 23rd. So today's the 21st. Santa was booked, and at the bookstores, at all the bookstores with Christmas events, there were no Santa Claus to take orders from kids. There might not have been a Santa Claus at this bookstore, but there was a murder. What happened? Logico asked when he arrived. Of course, Santa didn't show. Department store assistant Elf Greenie. I do love that assistant Elf Greenie just gets demoted numerous times. The lowest rank an elf can have, said, on account of he's been kidnapped and you still haven't found him yet. Uh-huh, Logico said, pretending to write this down in his notebook. And people just started going crazy about it, overturning tables, fighting each other. It turned into a real riot. So, no surprise, somebody died. Can you solve it? Logico figured that he could, but he was shocked at how poorly organized this bookstore was. He couldn't count on anything being in the section it was supposed to be in. A lot of the potential weapons seemed to be Myrtle branded products. Logico was going to have to do some outside research to figure this out. I do love, actually, the weapons are actual Myrtle products. It's a DVD box set of Myrtle season one. There is no DVD as far as I know, but that is an in story situation that happens in volume one. That is so cool. Like, while you're doing the first volume of the Myrtle, spoilers, but not spoilers, Logico ends up taking on a book deal of making a book based off of the real life murders that he sung. So it gets real meta. But anyway, they end up making a movie based off of it. And so throughout the rest of the murders, we follow in the background or like as a side gag, there are mentions about how Logical is going to have a new movie with this one. And so I do love that in their canon, there is a box set of movies for Myrtle. Then there is a Christmas penguin, which again keeps coming up. This is the Christmas penguin is new, and at the back it does teach you how to make your own personal Christmas penguin, which I think is really fun, like a cute little crafty thing for the holidays. But very suspicious that for the umpteenth time a Christmas penguin is here. There's the Myrtle's jigsaw puzzle. Me and my fiance do have one. And we haven't finished it yet, but it is really dope. And to actually see what the characters look like, or like an artist representation of what the characters look like, got me really hyped and excited because we only get like little icons. Then there's the Marrow, which is the Myrtle's legal way of getting around saying tarot cards. And it says that apparently in the future they will be available. I can't wait to see how that will tie into the story in real life. Like if they make real life Marrow cards, will it be a puzzle? Will it just be Marrow cards and then just different visuals? I would be excited to see that in the future. I think that's a great drop. And then the Myrtle board game, which I also do have, and I was able to play. I have real side tangent about me. I have a I have started a board game community that has been going pretty well, and I hope that it expands and goes even bigger and better. But I have been able to play it with my new board game community, and it is a very fun and quick game. Um, and so, anyways, I say that to say just a little fun Easter egg that made me happy. The suspects were Grandmaster Rose, Assistant Elf Greenie, Chancellor Tuscany, Agent Ink, and Hack Blacksman. Now, when I did this puzzle, I solved it and I was shocked because I was like, not my bestie Agent Ink. Agent Ink killed somebody. And I will have to go back into the different volumes, but I am 90% sure Agent Ink has never murdered someone before. So this was a genuine shock for me that she did. I really thought it would be Hack Blackston that would be eliminated unless it was another double murder. But I say that to say I was shook. And at this point, I'm like, okay, maybe my theory about Mrs. Claus working with Agent Ink is a right. Now at this point, as of today, because today is the 21st, I'm leaning more towards Agent Ink is Mrs. Claus is still the person. I'm still locking in Mrs. Claus to the day I die. But I feel like Mrs. Claus is working with the Christmas Penguin somehow. and maybe she's like a new tech CEO person or whatever, and really wants to push this Christmas penguin thing so she could profit off of it. And so she poses as Mrs. Claus, gets him kidnapped because she couldn't do the deed herself, and then that's why we're in this situation. And it just so happens that Dame Obsidian and everyone else profits. But then I'm like, they keep mentioning this movie, so I feel like maybe I'm in between. It's really Mrs. Claus working with Midnight the Third, and Mrs. Claus turns out to be a plot twist character that ended up helping making the movie, because that's been like a through line throughout this entire book. So I feel like they wouldn't just drop it out of nowhere, right? Or it's that plus Mrs. Claus is trying to push her new thing. And also, I mentioned it before, but maybe I am very confident it's Mrs. Claus at this point. But the reason why I'm not confident in, and I do want to lock in a reason. So as of the 20, as of right now, even with the new knowledge that I have of the 22nd and the 23rd I'm on, I haven't done the 23rd yet. Even with the knowledge that I have doing December 22nd, I think that it's Mrs. Claus that did it. Mrs. Claus isn't who she says she is. It's going to be a plot twist revealed for her to be somebody. And I think that somebody is someone who is a penguin themselves, or is like a real penguin enthusiast and wants penguins to be the forefront of Christmas and not Santa Claus. Or it's Mrs. Claus, and turns out she's another holiday character, maybe Thanksgiving, and wants to ruin Christmas because she feels as though another holiday deserves more shine. So they introduced this Christmas penguin thing to profit off of it so they can make their new holiday. Does that make sense? It makes sense to me. I hope it makes sense for you. That's where I'm at right now. Okay, and now we are on December 22nd. Lights, camera, murder. When the movie premiered, it went well, it went bad. It seems Santa's poor plight just made everyone sad. So, yeah, basically, if I have not said this before, they ended up making the movie. Hold on, I gotta show it to you guys, the little poster that they made. If you guys can see it, this is what it looks like, Santa's sleigh. They did make the movie. Midnight Studios presents a Blackston film, so Hack Blackston was on this. Silverton the Legend is still the main character, or plays as Santa. Uh, and it was directed by Alan Swiftsey. Now, we have not heard of an Alan Swiftsey, and so this makes me believe at this point too, because I had to go back for December 22nd. I'll get to the blurb too, but I just want to add this in. I do think that maybe Mrs. Claus is Alan Swiftsey. I find it very interesting. She does not know how reindeers fly, and she keeps appearing in places where it does not seem like she's concerned about Santa Claus being gone. So I feel like she does have something to do with it. So maybe the plot twist is that it's Alan Swiftsey, Mrs. Claus is Alan Swiftsey, and Miss Alan Swiftsey is doing this because of the film, but then the film flops, and so they had another venture, which was a Christmas Penguin with Chairman Chalk. I don't know. I'm just tossing things out there. Okay, so December 22nd. The entire town was abuzz by the release of Santa's Sleigh, the new Santa action movie from Midnight Pictures. Everyone kept talking about it, saying things like, "Why did they make an action movie about Santa Claus?" Fantastic question. Uh, and isn't it that in poor taste since Santa is missing? Or Santa's missing? What are you talking about? He's a fictional character. Midnight the Third made his money the same way his father did, by inheriting it from his father. Midnight the First, the founder of Midnight Studios, had been as good at making money as he was about making movies. Better, in fact. But he had a theory about this movie. He believed that no press was bad press, and even if everyone hated it, it would do well at the box office. His theory was really put to the test, however, when one of the leads in the show was murdered just before the premiere. And so the Excuse me. And so the suspects were Midnight the Third, Hack Blackston, Mr. Grayman, Dame Obsidian, and Silverton the Legend. So at this point, I'm like, okay, Hack, it's your time, right? Because I don't think they're gonna eliminate Midnight the Third, but it's between those two unless we have a repeat killer. And so it turns out it is Hack Blackston. And so it says at the end, it was Hack Blackston with a Botox needle at Midnight Studios. And he says, okay, fine. Honestly, I was furious about the movie, but I was mostly furious that they cast A-list Albalone as the lead instead of someone unknown. So I did what I had to do before the premiere to get my revenge. When Logico remarked that it was an A-list Abalone who had been killed, she doesn't even appear in the story. A-list Abalone is also an icon. She doesn't appear much in the books, but she is like Silverton the Legend is basically a washed up actor, where A-list Abalone is like that girl. Like she is the Beyonce. Well, technically Dame is the Beyonce of this world, but let's say like Abalone's Adele. I'd like that comparison. Abalone's Adele. Every time you see Adele, you have a smile on your face, but she really just be doing her own thing, singing her own song, and then go back to her mansion and count her millies. You know what I mean? Right. Abalone's Adele. So Adele isn't even in here. Electric Barbosa wasn't even A-list Avalon who had been killed. She doesn't even appear in the story. But an unnamed extra, Blackstone was depressed. I guess now they'll probably make another one. He wasn't wrong about that, and neither was Midnight the Third with his theory. All the publicity around this film, including the murder, did a lot to keep it in the public eye, and it broke records all over town. Logical crossed off Hack Blackstone from the list of possible Santa suspects, and realized that seeing the movie had not helped him decide, in the slightest, what to do about Santa, and Assistant Elf Granny's request that he be the one to deliver all the presents on Christmas. I don't know if I mentioned this before. Basically, Assistant Elf Granny was just like, hey man, since you haven't found Santa, we need someone to deliver the presents, and it's probably going to be you. So he's still thinking about that. And then at the end it says, but that night when he went to sleep, he had a dream, which leads into the 23rd. So at this point of me talking right now, I have not solved the puzzle for December 23rd, but I will read the beginning preamble and give my like on-screen reaction thoughts on it. Okay, preamble. December 23rd, all the penguins. And then Logico's doubts were dismissed out of hand when he dreamt of the penguins from all of the lands. Logico went to sleep on the 23rd of December, expecting to wake up the next morning how he went to sleep, a cold headed skeptic. But that night, as he slept, he had a curious dream. He had a curious dream. Like most of Logico's dreams, he was solving a murder during it. But this one had an unusual setting. He was standing at the North Pole and he was surrounded by penguins. As far as the eye could see was a giant, enormous, unfathomably large flock of penguins. Now this didn't make sense because penguins are not native to the South Pole, but in fact only live in the southern hemisphere. But it also didn't make sense because they could talk. And each of them, every last one, began to squawk about the good things their friend, a kid who had given them room and shelter, had done, and how the kids had really kept up their end of the bargain this year. And could Logico please find it in his heart to bring them their presents. But before he could consider that request, he had to solve a crime. See, now I feel really great about Mrs. Claus having something to do with the penguins, and I really hope that Mrs. Claus isn't eliminated in this exact one. But I do think that maybe Mrs. Claus is like a kid that, oh, you know what? And I haven't even solved the puzzle yet. And I truly have not gone past December 23rd. I think Mrs. Claus, based off of this little blurb, is one of the rich kids, or maybe one of the kids who's always gotten coal, and so has created the Christmas penguins as a way for everybody to get a present. But because the Christmas penguins are something that goes against Santa's thing, they ended up dressing up as Mrs. Claus to get Santa Claus knocked off, right? And that way Santa's not present, so that way everybody has to get a Christmas penguin, and so everybody gets a present. And actually they're a bad tech CEO, but we've already gotten rid of CEO Indigo, right? As of before the 23rd, I'm sorry if you guys heard a big whoosh on the mic. But before I solve the 23rd puzzle, the suspects that are left as options are Mrs. Claus, Scientific Evergreen, Inspector Irrational, Midnight the Third, and Truth or Topaz. I'm not going to change my answer. I'm still locking in Mrs. Claus right now. But unless it's Inspector Irrational, because Inspector Irrational never got a present, and so he created Christmas penguins as a way to spite Santa Claus. I don't know. I'm gonna let that simmer a little bit, but I'm still sticking with Mrs. Claus, and maybe Mrs. Claus is the one that created the Christmas penguins and is doing this thing because the penguins have just been so prevalent, and for it to now have its own day, I feel like it's saying something to me. So yeah, I'm gonna go solve it and be back. They had me in the first half. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so December 23rd. Man, we are really ramping it up. But we had suspects Grandmaster Rose, Ski Pro Sunflower, Mrs. Claus, Ebenezer Rouge, and Chancellor Tuscany. So at this point, I'm like, everyone has been found a murderer but Mrs. Claus. Is my theory really about to shatter in front of my eyes? But no, it was Ebenezer Rouge again. And so it says at the end, with that, Logico awoke. He sat up in his bedchamber, which is what Irrational called a bedroom, and he realized suddenly that he was a changed person. All those Christmas penguins who told him about their unbelievably good kids, and adults who still believed in Santa, and all the good things they had done this year had convinced Logico. They all deserved presents. And if Logico couldn't solve the mystery of where Santa went, then he was going to have to solve the mystery of how Santa could deliver all those presents in the first place. He was going to have to do it himself. Now, at this point, I truly, truly feel as though I am right in that it is Mrs. Claus because this is the umpteenth time, and she really could have been a suspect this time. But I do think that it was Mrs. Claus. I think that she has something to do with the Christmas penguins. I think maybe she invented a Christmas penguins because she didn't get a present, and maybe it was like a really funny mix up, like Santa didn't know her address, or maybe she sent it to the South Pole or something. But I'm still locking in Mrs. Claus. I feel real confident. All right, y'all. We are on December 24th now, and I am so shocked. I just finished it, and I don't think I was able to read it, but I will read it again anyway in case the girlies in the back needed to hear. Logico is coming to town, and so Logico rode in the sleigh through the sky. If he couldn't save Santa, at least he could fly. In order to save Santa Claus's place, Detective Logico is going to need to obtain the 5 relics of Santa Claus. Now, if you did not read this book, the 5 relics of Santa Claus was actually used in the movie that Midnight the Third made, which was like a hack thing that was like, oh, how do you even know? Like, why would the 5 relics even matter? But now it's an actual thing, right? These were the 5 ancient relics that allow Santa Claus to deliver all his presents on Christmas Eve. Each of them was being held by a different person. Logico was going to have to flip back through his notes to find who had each of the relics, and then he was going to have to visit those people first during his ride. Each of the relics might be called something different when it appears earlier in this book, but they'll still have the same look and be recognizable from their description. Once the relics are identified, then Logical will have to figure out where these people are now so he can visit them first on his journey around the world. Unfortunately, one of these relics is an imitation. Unless Logico discovers which relic isn't real, he'll never be able to deliver all the presents in one night. Help Logico figure out who has what where, and then which one of the relics is a knockoff so that he can complete Santa's trip around the world. So at this point, Santa has been found. And the suspects this time aren't actually suspects, they're the people that hold the relics for Santa Claus. Which is crazy because Scientific Evergreen is here, so it's like, how did you not know Santa Claus is real? And Scientific Evergreen is still a suspect, which was something very interesting. But turns out Major Red was the one that had the fake relic. So again, we don't get to cross up Scientific Evergreen. But even if it was Scientific Evergreen, this wasn't a murder, so it wouldn't count. Excuse me, as a cross off. So it says after we find out it's Major Red. But how is Deductive Logico going to make his journey around the world if he didn't have the magic suit that let Santa into any home? What are we going to do, Rational, he asks. I don't know, Rational replied. Is it over? Is this going to be the year without a Santa Claus? Meow, said the little stray cat. This cat has been following as like a little hidden Mickey this entire time, which has been adorable. And I knew that the cat would be vital in some way, shape, or form, but I knew that the cat wouldn't like turn into Mrs. Claus or anything, so I didn't mention it. Meow, said the little cat that had followed Logico the entire month of December. Logico, Irrational said, he's volunteering. Cats are experts at sneaking into places. No, Logico said, because he'd be scratched up. No, Logico said, because he'd been scratched up several times by this cat. I can't do it. But the little stray cat just looked up at Logico with his big brown eyes, and Logico melted. And so Logico flew around the world that night, using the 4 relics, and whatever he needed to get into a home, the little stray cat snuck in and unlocked the doors from the inside or cut the locks with its razor sharp claws. And by the end of the night, Logico had decided to adopt him, which is very cute, and I hope that this cat ends up appearing from the next Myrtle Mysteries. Even if he got a little scratched up during the ride. But that wasn't the only thing he had figured out during the ride. The other thing was this. He had finally had enough information to understand who had kidnapped Santa and why. Now, I am sticking with Mrs. Claus. However, I would like to put a little asterisk. There was a little note that I did not want to mention because I felt like it would be a plot hole in my theory and I wasn't emotionally ready for it. But I find it crazy that Midnight the Third's movie not only had the 5 relics mentioned, but when you had to go to the appendix to see who left what review, Santa leaves a review saying help. And so I'm like, why would Santa say help based off of his movie? I think I'm sticking with Mrs. Claus. I'm sticking with Mrs. Claus to the bitter end. However, I would not be surprised if it's actually Midnight the Third because he wanted to do a movie, and this was the only way he thought possible, because this isn't the first time Midnight the Thirds had a very convoluted idea to make a movie and profit off of it before. But I just really think there's a huge thing with Mrs. Claus. So I am going to lock in before the final reveal that it is Mrs. Claus. I think it has something to do with the Christmas penguins. And that is what I'm locking in. So I will be back for the last day and the last Myrtle to say my thoughts and reveal who kidnapped Santa. Thing I forgot to say. I did that whole dramatic thing. Sorry, I'm back. I still haven't done the day yet. We have 5 suspects left. We have Mrs. Claus, Scientific Evergreen. We have Inspector Irrational, Midnight the Third, and Truther Topaz. I am still sticking with Mrs. Claus, but those were the 5 leftover suspects for those who are following along. Let's see who kidnapped Santa Claus. Hi, I know I'm back and I keep like leaving a cliffhanger and then coming back to do a footnote edit, but I think that this is so freaking dope. Okay, so it says, of the 25 December 25th, who stole Santa? And then Logico found through the notes he composed there are 5 suspects left, so the case he could close. Of the 25 suspects that deductive Logico deduced could have committed the Santa napping, 20 of them were murders. And since we learned from General Coffee that the person who hired him and orchestrated the Santa napping was at the North Pole, then he knew it had to be one of the remaining 5 people. But which one was it? So Logico went through his copy of Merry Myrtle and found the 5 suspects who had not been guilty of a murder. Then he copied their information, including their height, sign, etc., into his mystery cards. He was going to have to keep his wits about him if he was hoping to solve the case, rescue Santa, and save Christmas forever. And I'm mentioning this, still haven't solved it yet because it's blank, but you literally have to put in your 5 suspects. So you could have like been keeping track and be wrong and have a whole spoiler, or you could have been keeping track like me and have the right people down there. That is so freaking cool. Like if this whole video has not convinced you to, one, get this book for yourself and play along, but two, get some of the other volumes and support GT Carber and all of his book series, or do the online Myrtles, you are crazy. This is such an amazing puzzle book. It's a story within a story. It has really fun puzzles to solve and you feel really accomplished. And I promise you, when doing this, your Clue game will improve. I am not the best at Clue, but I have gotten better at Clue because of this. So, with that being said, I will do it now for realsies. Still locking in Mrs. Claus. I haven't been spoiled by anything by this point. But truly and honestly, next time you see my face, it's going to be me reacting to the plot twist and talking about it with you all. Not looked at what the bolded thing is, and my god, is this such an amazing Myrtle. Let me just say again, if this has not been advertisement for how amazing this book is, and I hope that everybody that is watching this truly gets into Myrtle. I know I've made one video before about Myrtle, but I like, this has been my full deep dive. You've been watching me go through the motions about it. And so before this is revealed and I literally give you my real-time reaction, because again, I genuinely do not know who did it and why. Please support GT Carber. GT Carber, if you're watching this, I can be bribed with money. No, I'm joking. GT Carber, if you're watching this, all that I ask is that you just send me the next Myrtle puzzles, or if you need somebody to test things out, I am here. I am willing, because this is I literally, hold on. Actually, I'll be back. I'll be back for the reveal, because I just need y'all to really understand how dedicated I am and how hype I am about this. So give me one. Okay, I'm back. I just had to say again, I love Myrtles, and all of this has been the knowledge of everything that I've done. But please, and please support. Puzzling is such a fun thing to do and has not been TikTokified yet. Prayerfully, it never does. But if you ever doubted how much of a fan I am, these are all of the Myrtle books to this date as of December 21st, 2025. That is out now. And I have done all of these. I'm still currently working on the bordergrams. So that's where my pen is right now, but I sort of stopped doing the bordergrams, though fun. It is much more challenging than the Myrtles, I will say, but it is a lot of fun. Uh, I stopped it so I could do the Myrtle Mysteries that I've been doing this whole month. But this is this many books in the making, and this all started with me deciding to do books of the month and Myrtle being one of the books of the month. And I really love the series, y'all. Like this is these are real fun puzzles, overarching stories that go into each other. There's been a lot of winks and nods that have happened, but I just wanted to show this off because one, I can, but two, this is amazing and it's still going and it's still going to continue. And I don't have the junior novels. I will say that because again, I'm not a kid. But please support your favorite authors and artists, especially in this very growing time. And if you enjoy this video, please share, like, subscribe, all the other YouTuber things. But most importantly, give some love to this creator because they really did their thug thizzle. If you do not or cannot get these books for whatever reason, you could also play the Myrtles for free each day on Myrtle.com. This is not sponsored. I just want to share the Christmas cheer and joy and love. And I finally get to cohesively talk about a Myrtle a puzzle series that I have been gushing about for over a year now. And I have seen, like, literally, I got this first one when it just first came out. This was literally the first book. And I've been here for all of this. So I'm just really glad I could share. All right, enough about the sappiness. I'll put that here for now. Let's see who did it. Logical was convinced that the nibbled cookie was the key to it all. Because you know what? You know what? I was right. The nibbled cookie, if my puzzle is right, is Mrs. Claus. Mrs. Claus had the cookie, had the nibbled cookie. Wait, where was she though? She was at the North Pole. Wait, so he was still at the North Pole that whole time? Oh my god, I just can't believe it. Ah, this is so amazing. This is so amazing. Okay, okay. And she did it to give Santa a vacation? Okay, I'm hyped because I got it right, but I feel like I got it right for the wrong reason, question mark. But let's see what it says. I am like, y'all really don't know how excited I am right now. What? There's a December 26th? Oh, there's a bonus Myrtle? Ah, that's so fun. Okay. So it says it was Mrs. Claus with a nibbled cookie to give Santa a vacation, and Santa was currently at the North Pole. Also, for reference, I've only gotten two out of all of these Myrtles wrongs. One of which was because I knew what the answer was, but my heart and soul was very confused because I thought, oh, this can't be a double murder. And the second one was a genuine I didn't understand. I'm so excited. So I don't want the mic to cut in and out. So it says, yes, the entire time Santa Claus had been relaxing at the spa. They kept mentioning that the spa was broken. It really wasn't broken. Okay. Yes, the entire time Santa Claus had been relaxing at the spa at the North Pole, which, due to a certain reflection of the light on the snow and increased carbon in the atmosphere, was in a localized microclimate that kept the temperature always at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. This was his Christmas present to himself, which he gave himself once every 25 years, a single year off, and a challenge to one non believer. What? So then why was. Okay, so in the appendix at the end, one of the reviews for the movies was ho ho help. Why would he need help? Okay, let me keep reading. Uh since the beginning of Christmas, not a single person has failed to pick up the mantle, though not everyone has done as good a job as Logico did. Remember, what is important is not what you believe, but what you will do. Logico was willing to take the role of Santa, even though he didn't believe. That is the important question to ask if you wish to keep Christmas in your heart all year. Not do you believe in Santa, but would you be Santa? Aww, a moral to the story? I know I just finished gushing about it, but like in all of these books, there really isn't like a moral to the story at the end. I think this is very cute. If you would, then be Santa to someone this year. Give them something without taking any credit. Signing it only from Santa. Maybe a couple of Merry Myrtle, but any present would work. And you know what's so fun about this? You know what's so great? And I didn't necessarily do it because my friend knows that I gave them all these presents, but like I really did gift my friend this. as a Christmas present, as a surprise. And by now, she has already opened the book and has either started it or talked to me about it. So, Merry Christmas, friend. Also, everything else will make sense. And Merry Christmas to all my other friends as well. But my one specific friend who literally got this as a present, I did not know. This is like as of December 21st, I did not know that this is how it ends. And I love that so much. And it ends with the cute little moral of the story. Okay. So what I will say is, this was a great spin-off Myrtle. I think that I was way too in the weeds and truly forgot that at the end of the day, this was a Myrtle that was meant to be gifted to someone who may not have known the series. So, as someone who has read all of the series main focal, Bordergrams is a spinoff, by the way, so it has nothing to do with the main story. As someone who has read and have done all of the Myrtles up until this point, I did get in the weeds, but I knew it was Mrs. Claus. Not for the reason, but just doing the Myrtle so much, I know where the twists and turns are gonna come. But what I will also say is too, I think this is a fantastic intro to Myrtle book. It's 25 instead of the 100 that are in here. Just if you wanted to see. Actually, the case files has 64. Um, this one has 50, and the rest are 100. As you can see, book of the month. And I got it when it was 50% off. But yeah, it's usually 100 puzzles, and this may be really daunting for a lot of people. So I think that Merry Myrtle is such a great intro to Myrtle book. Again, friend, if you have already completed it, or if you have been watching daily, or however you've been doing this and have gotten to the end of this, Merry Christmas. Whenever it is, still you could wish someone a Merry Christmas, and maybe it's next year Christmas. Anyways, I say that to say, please, please, please support GT Carver, or pick up the book, do the website, however you see fit. I am not sponsored. I don't know this man from a can of paint, but I have truly fallen in love with this book series and all of the fantastical characters and weapons and stories that have happened. I think that this is a very cute ending. And it makes sense because, again, this is an intro thing. I think he didn't want to go too crazy because you don't know who's playing this. So having this cute little moral, I really love. None of the other Myrtles have this like cute moral at the end. Just to give you guys a heads up, it's not Sunshine and Rain, especially volume two. Especially volume two, be ready for war with volume 2. But anyways, enough about that. If you have made it into however long of a video this is, thank you. And this year has been a roller coaster of a year for me in my own personal life that I will not go into because you guys don't know me like that. You guys do and you don't. But one of my favorite comforts to do, regardless on how regular or irregular, is to be able to talk to you guys and just talk to a screen about things that I've always enjoyed. This YouTube started because I started doing video audios to myself because I felt like I was annoying the people around me, or they weren't really interested in everything that I wanted to say. Um, Not in a negative, but like just niche things. Like, no friend is going to really sit there for like over 8 hours to listen to me ribble and rant about TXT as much as I could on my phone. But now, after what, having this YouTube for like over a year now, going on 2, and just being able to have that time to really talk about something that means a lot to me, and especially since Myrtle, like the full circle moment, because I feel like Myrtle was the first book that I talked about with you all, if not the first video after I talked about TXT. And to now talk about Myrtle and to share it with someone that I truly love and care about means a lot. So I don't. I feel like this is usually like the YouTuber like time to say something really profound, and maybe I just did. But whoever and wherever you are, I wish you a truly, truly Merry Christmas. I wish you a Happy New Year into 2026. And I hope that you had a great laugh, you have a great fun, that whatever video you started watching me at, whatever video you will continue to watch, it really does put a smile to your face, and you have someone that you can laugh and joke about and give random facts and information with. And I am excited to talk about more stuff in the next coming years, hopefully. Um, so, with all that being said, if you like this video, please like this video. Feel free to share, feel free to comment. um, about what you thought throughout this entire time, what book you may like if you have done the Myrtle series, or just wishing me a Merry Christmas as I did to you. Share the love. And I will see you in the next video.